This is the D6 generation with your hosts, Craig Gallant.
No, cut that. Keep that. Someday it's going to be worth something.
Russ Walkling.
You put me in an ATST with frickin' Wookiees attacking me and whatnot?
Now you're talking. And Andrzej Probulski in the third chair.
Hey there, guys.
With contributions from Total Fangirl
Vampires do not sparkle.
and our loyal listeners.
Crazy? That's like 400 hours of gamer nonsense.
Welcome to another edition of Rapid Fire, the roundtable discussion of all things gaming. Coming at the speed of a burning walker running downhill toward the pristine waterfront.
What?
Today's edition is brought to you by all of our friends at Patreon, those men and women who bravely help us keep the lights on and the not-so-terrible rolling. Today, I'd like to thank Robert Dean, Robert Moore, Robert Oswald, Robert Passmore, and Roland Steiner. I'm Geekly McNerding, your host. Today, our panelists are Russ, Alice, Warren, Wakeland, and the man behind the multiverse, the ace behind the architecture, the lord of the laser, Andrzej Carol Pelletier Probulski.
Yeah.
Let's begin. Issue number 1. As a wildly successful comic series and one of the most successful television series in recent years, The Walking Dead is undoubtedly having a major impact on popular culture today. Whether the books in the show contribute to the swelling zombie craze, benefited from it, or continued to rise up despite its waning, there can be no denying cultural saturation the story has achieved. Question. In the spin-off series, Fear the Walking Dead, the timing of the zombie outbreak is never stated explicitly but can be inferred to be between 2009 and 2010 through the presence of what dated artifact? Tyrese Russ.
The mobile phone. Smartphone.
Abraham Andrzej.
No idea.
I think Russ cheated. Can you see this paper from where
No.
you're sitting, Mr. Wakeland?
No.
The iPhone 4.
There you go.
I'll give Russ partial credit,
Woohoo.
which means he's partially wrong.
Oh.
Issue number 4. It can hardly be doubted that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is one of the awesomest movies ever to hit the big screen ever in history. One might debate the minutia of what parts are the most amazing, what bits of dialogue the most hilarious or poignant or insightful, which special effects sequences will live on in the minds of an adoring public for eons to come, but none can deny that the opening scene superimposing a deliciously cute dancing baby tree and an epic high-tech showdown with a gigantic Cthulhu-esque monstrosity is certainly one of the most epic such battles ever committed to film. Question. How long did it take to complete the computer-generated effects for the opening battle scene to the cinematic tour de force? Unseen Ravager Russ.
2 months.
Young Ego Andrzej.
6 weeks?
Both of you are wrong! The visual effects team for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 worked on that opening sequence for 2 years to achieve the perfection we have the privilege of seeing today.
Wow.
Issue number 3. We've come a long way from laying felt down on the floor over piles of books littered with moss and lichen and melted packing styrofoam from those humble beginnings to solid three-dimensional terrain cut out of the universe with a frickin' laser, for God's sakes. Who would have thunk it? I mean, lasers in the games, sure, but buildings and stairs and boats cut out with lasers? How cool is that? Question. In what year did Albert Einstein establish the theoretical foundations for the laser and the maser in the paper Je Quantentheorie de Strahlung, on the quantum theory of radiation, via a re-derivation of Max Planck's law of radiation conceptually based upon probability coefficients, Einstein coefficients, for the absorption, spontaneous emission, and simultaneous emission of electromagnetic radiation? Robert Russ.
1934.
Isidore Andrzej.
1922?
Oh, he's close, but you both went over, so on any rules for any game show, you're wrong! 1917.
Oh, good guess, Andrzej.
And issue number 4. The Walking Dead in all its formats is known for many things. Deep character development, difficult moral decisions, lots and lots of animated dead people, and in addition to those dead people, making many, many, many more dead people. In fact, one would be hard-pressed to come up with another long-standing storytelling staple with the numbers the Walking Dead comic has put up over the years. Question. What is the number, title, and or body count of the deadliest collected volume of The Walking Dead to date? Roland Russ.
Walking Dead body count. I'm going to go with 4,320.
Alpha Andrzej.
3,200?
Sadly, no. That would be Volume 21, All Out War Part 2, with 51 deaths.
That's it? Oh.
No, 51 deaths. 51 characters dying. Where you can see them. Come on, that's fun. That's it for now. Thanks for listening, and good night.
This episode of the D6 Generation is brought to you by Lone Wolf Development. Take your game to the next level.
And by Geek Nation Tours. Rise up and join the Geek Nation, touring the world at geeknationtours.com.
And by Audible. Try the service, get a free book, and support the show. All by visiting audibletrial.com/D6G.
Hello!
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, and welcome to episode 214, Craig,
That just seems like a dream now, Russ.
of the D6 Generation. I'm Russ Wakelin.
I am Craig Gallant.
And I'm Andrzej Probulski.
Hey, Andrzej, welcome to the show. Craig, you have to share, how did you discover Andrzej's awesome stuff?
Well, very
happened?
quickly, because I don't want to bore anybody, because I
Right.
think you may hear it again soon.
Yes.
I was looking for some cool table elements so that I could do a cool urban terrain board for the Marvel game. So, longtime listeners will know that was several months ago when I was in the middle of that fiasco. And I saw a bunch of different options, and Secret Weapon has the plastic ones and all this stuff. And I had basically 3 different layouts, all purchased at different places. And I was like, oh, this one kind of, but not really. Oh, this one kind of. I had one like mouse pad thing that I thought was really cool, 3x3. I needed 3x3, so 2x2 tiles wouldn't cut it. And so I needed 1x1 or a 3x3 pad. And then I don't know where it popped up, but I found Multiverse Gaming, and I thought, oh, that looks pretty. What's this versatile thing? And I was hooked. Because I sort of fell into the website. The concept of building up as well as building out. So you have a 3 foot by 3 foot, but it's multi-layer.
Yeah.
I loved it. I loved the detail of the different. It's all MDF, I should say. It's MDF laser cut terrain. Many of the pieces, Andrzej has managed to hide the tabs. I think that's a trick that most companies are going to find you're going to have to do to keep current and keep competitive. You would be hard pressed, for instance, that the taco stand, Dos Calaveras, authentic Mexican street food stand, was the first thing that I built of his. It just caught my eye. I couldn't say no. I ordered
tacos, Craig. Tacos.
It's tacos. Actually, I was thinking enchilada. What is it that Deadpool eats? Because I was in the middle of the whole Marvel thing.
Chimichangas.
Chimichangas. There you go. Nice. So I just fell in love with the stuff, and then I started reading on the website how a lot of his stuff has been inspired by real life architecture, and I got intrigued. I started writing to him. We wrote back and forth, and I thought it would be great to have him on because laser cut terrain is such a big thing that it's been around forever, but it's really coming into its own. And there's a few companies out there that are really leveraging those lasers, and their designs are really starting to push the limits. And I thought he was one of them. And so it was kismet, really.
Excellent. Well, nice job
Come
keeping
on.
that to the short version. I appreciate that.
Yes,
So,
that was the short version.
So we had to get Andrzej on the show. It was fantastic. Thank you, Andrzej, for comking on. Of course, Multiverse Gaming is your awesome terrain stuff, and so we had to get him on here. We'll hear more about Andrzej's business and Multiverse Gaming and how he got all into that, and then later we're going to review the Walking Dead miniature game as well. So very exciting. Craig and I just had a great game of that on some of Andrzej's terrain, and man, did it play nicely on that. So great stuff. But before we get to all that,
you should check out my Twitter if you want to see a 2x2 board of his stuff. The versatile multi-level stuff.
So before we get to all that, though, we do have to do a little housekeeping. So we did manage to run into Andrzej at Dunkin' Donuts the other day while we were recording the Lost Chapter.
That Dunkin' Donuts really gets around. It was in Poland.
Andrzej, do you remember, Andrzej, what we discussed in Dunkin' Donuts?
The Guardians of the Galaxy, as far as I can remember.
That's correct, which is impressive because right now, what time is it now, Andrzej, as we're recording this live in your locale there?
It's 2 a.m. actually.
That is dedication. 2 a.m. in Poland, and he's on with us. Appreciate that, Andrzej. He did this last week with us in Dunkin' Donuts as well. And we talked about Guardians of the Galaxy 2, chock full of spoilers. If you've not seen it yet, A, why? And B, don't listen yet. Go watch the movie first, then listen to our thoughts and see if you agree with Andrzej, Craig, and myself on what we thought of Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Now, Craig, if someone wants to hear that, though, and they're not a patron, how do they go about getting in on the action there?
Well, they would want to become a patron, I would think, because that's the easiest way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And to do that, they would go to our website, www.the d6generation.com, and they would click on the Patreon link on the in the right-hand margin, and that will bring them right to our Patreon page, or go to patreon.com and search for the D6 Generation, which will bring you to the same exact place. Avoid the video at all costs. And just read the quick blurb as to what Patreon's. That should be a goal. Yeah, we should make once we make a certain amount, we'll take the video down. There we go.
Oh, that would probably double our income right there.
There we go. And check it out. And basically, what it is it's you like kicking a little tip into the tip jar for the show. You program the whole thing. You decide how much you're going to give and when and the maximum amount. And if you are tipping $2, if you're a member of the community, offering $2 an episode or more, the entire library of Lost Chapters is unlocked for you that moment in time.
That's how it goes. Now, also, we should mention that Gen Con is coming up. Big convention here in the United States, of course, in August. And we've been people are asking questions. Is the D6G Play by Mob going to be there again this year? Yes, it is, Craig. Yes, it is.
Yes, it will be there. It is.
Now, for those who aren't familiar with how event registration at Gen Con works, first, the event organizers, that would be us, have to submit the event on Gen Con's website. And then Gen Con reviews all these things and approves them in some kind of timely manner that is not all at the same time. So right now, if you go there, you will not find our event.
For some value of the word timely.
Yes. So it's not there now, but it is submitted, and as soon as they approve it, we will tweet it out. But it is coming. It will be there. We're shooting for Thursday night at 8, but again, they have to finally approve the final time, so we don't know exactly when it'll be. That's the goal. Much like last year, same size room. That's the whole plan. So we'll see what we get. But we're super excited about that. So keep an eye on our Twitter feed or our Facebook page, and we'll post when that happens.
Indeed.
So, Craig, what's the time now for?
Oh, whenever you ask me that in that tone of voice, I get all confused. Achievements in gaming.
It is time for Achievements in Gaming, which, of course, is brought to us by all our friends at Patreon, keeping the lights on here. Andrzej, what have you been playing lately? What have you been doing for board games, miniature games, or anything else like that?
Well, on the one hand, we've been playing a lot of Frostgrave with my fiancée right now.
Nice.
Ooh, nice.
You caught one that plays Frost. Oh, she's a keeper.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, she prefers to tackle me with her Black Orcs in Blood Bowl, but
nice.
But Frostgrave is her second favorite. So, yeah, that's what we've been playing lately. And then there's the awesome Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles board game from IDW.
Ooh, I almost bought that. How do you like that game?
Actually, it's probably my favorite miniature board game since I don't know when. It's really great. At first, I thought it was just like another thing that just wants to profit on the external IP.
Yeah,
but it's a really well crafted system. It's so solid, and the fact that there's always something going on. There's no downtime between the players, and there's a lot of strategy involved in how all the characters cooperate, interact with themselves. It's awesome. It's really
super cool. Really this game is in my local gaming store, and I keep looking at it. And I'm a big Turtles fan, but I
strongly recommend it.
Like you. So now is it it is a pure co-op, or is one player playing the Foot or whoever, and the other players are playing the Turtles?
One of the players is the villain player. There's no AI deck or something like that. And it actually, I think it's a better option. I mean, I haven't yet encountered a game that would have an AI deck that would match the challenge that a real life player poses. So,
yeah, I'm with you. See, I call them Overlord style games after Descent, right? So I love the one player plays the bad guys against several people who play the heroes, right? So whether it's Descent or Imperial Assault or Level 7, there's a bunch of games like that, right? But so this looks cool. I like Turtles, but I was like you, I was afraid it was going to be sort of just a cash and grab and not really a well thought out game like that. So yeah, now you got me all excited to check that out. Put that on my list. Thanks.
Yeah, it's a really great game. I mean, I was surprised, but it's a gem, really.
Nice. Okay, cool. Very nice. How are the miniatures in there? Are they pretty good?
Yeah, they are not the best ones in the market. I mean, they are not on the Simon level, but and there are some scale issues. But other than that, they're really fine. They are large with some crisp details, so they paint up quite well.
Oh, cool. All right, very good, excellent. Well, Craig, what have you been playing lately?
Well, let's see, Russ. I vaguely remember a Molotov cocktail exploding in my face on a
glorious
waterfront.
day. Glorious day.
So yes, we played another game of The Walking Dead All Out War, and had a blast despite the Molotov incident of 2017. And then I played my third mission and closed out the month of May. We're doing 3 missions a month campaign. So I was the first player I think I was the first player in the campaign to close out the month. Played friend of the show and friend of the show, second, Stino, Justin. And he had Space Marines, and my Chaos guys were going in all battered and bruised from our run-in with the Harlequins in our last game, which was just god-awful. And the mission that we rolled up was Raid, and I was the defender, which is, you'll remember this from your Necromunda days, Russ, and it would not have done anything for your already ambivalent feelings towards the game.
Yes.
I was the one who had D6 of my guys available to me, and of course I rolled a 2.
Sure.
So I only had 2 guys on the board, and I do not get to control them.
No, of course not.
All I get to do is roll a D6 minus 3, and that's how far they move. And if it's a negative number, Justin got to move them.
Why not?
And at the end of each turn, they get a chance to try to spot the people sneaking up on my territory to try to blow up my secret bunker.
So you have what we would call a cornucopia of strategic options at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So, and that's exactly what happened. It was like 5 turns of moving, and because I rolled very terribly, 2 guys on the board, 5 turns, that's 10 rolls. I got to move a guy twice. So that means 8 times I got a 1, 2, or a 3. And I never actually got a 3 because that would be 0. So he got to move my guys every time. So it was 1 or 2, all 8 of those times. And I got to do very little. And then your reinforcements come in, but they come in on the edges, and it's random where they come in. Sure. And it's random when or if they come in.
Yep.
And so, and because of, to add to the randomness, we had, you roll a sort of like atmospheric effects, and we had rolled oil slick. So it's apparently at some point there had been an oil leak, and there was oil everywhere on the ground. And if you run, you have a 1 in 6 chance of going down, not pinned or prone, but actually down, which means you are wounded and most likely out of the game.
Right.
So it was just, from beginning to end, it was just ridiculously brutal. I got 1 shot off the entire game. My gun went out of ammo with that 1 shot. I hit, didn't wound, and that was it. So it was a very, very it took longer to set the terrain up than it took to play. And I was very frustrated because of the way the whole mission is set up. Very frustrated with the way the mission went. I mean, Justin played it exactly as you would play it. It was, I mean, he did a great job.
Well, it's not his fault.
And it was his first game ever.
Right.
Certainly, totally not his fault. This mission was just about as asymmetrical as you could possibly get and still call something a game.
Well, it sounded like a solo game, really. So
yeah,
really,
it was pretty much a solo game. It was pretty much Justin playing
and
himself.
You stand there and just watch your guys move around randomly.
But lest you think I left the whole situation with nothing but a bad taste in my mouth,
right.
I did, at the end, then you get to level up, and because I didn't get that much, like nothing bad happened to my guys, which is good, and I was able to level up, you still get 1, you're basically collecting Prometheum caches as your victory points, but it's the Prometheum caches you need 15 to win the game, win the campaign, but they are also your currency for buying in new models and hiring mercenaries to come in and fight for you. And so it's a really cool give and take dynamic of, do you want to hoard it, or do you, for instance, Chaos Space Marines cost so much. You get 100 points to spend between each game to either upgrade your troop or to buy 1 guy in, and that's not enough to buy a Chaos Space Marine. So to bring in any Chaos Space Marine, I have to give up a cache. which is okay because my guys are pretty darn cool. They're Chaos Space Marines. They come with a Chaos Mark, all kinds of cool stuff. But all of that cool, fun paperwork stuff made the whole game worthwhile because now I got my guy back because I was one guy down. Not that he would have showed up anyway. But so I mean, I still had fun, just not in the actual game itself.
Right. So I feel like it's kind of like, remember that old game, that old football game where you'd put all your guys on the little metal field and then you'd plug it in and it'd go bang, and the guys would vibrate around. It feels like it's about like that. Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the worst case scenario. Okay. And just so happens to be that's what it turns out to be every time you're there to watch it.
Okay.
But I that is not my experience normally.
Okay.
In the last mission, the mission itself was pretty even. Except that I was playing against Harlequins and I killed all the Harlequins except for one, and that one bog standard guy killed my entire Chaos Space Marine warband. That was a Harlequin thing though. That wasn't whatever. But no, I had fun. So
right,
I'll still chalk it up to having fun. I'm looking forward to the June phase. What about you, Russ? What have you been doing?
Let's see. Well, we did talk about Walking Dead. I thought the game was excellent. We played it on Andrzej's amazing terrain. It looked awesome. The scenario was the same as the first time we played, but I really liked this time, Craig, we tried out, two different, we tried making our own lists, which was fun. Yeah. So we'll talk more about that later in the show, but I had a really good time with that. Then my group, played game 7 of Seafall. So we are in our 7th game. We just got through with that. We got to open yet another box, and, we are still having an absolute blast with this game, and the whole story went to plaid this time around. Now, a whole, I don't want to spoil anything, but
don't give anything away.
Just stuff is happening that's super cool. I'm loving it. And it's funny because most folks who don't care for Seafall have not made it this far. But the folks who have made it this far, seem to love it. So we're still really enjoying it. We can't wait to play again. We're going to play again next week. Really, really enjoying Seafall, the legacy games. Also, finally got to play a game with Rafe at the table again, Craig, for first time in forever.
That's pretty cool.
So we played War Machine again, and I felt a little bad because he wanted to play. We know since longtime listeners will know that I have Signar. I have Trolls also, but Signar is my first love. Rafe has Khador, and we have this long-standing thing where we play Vlad versus Stryker every so often. It's sort of like a story thing, and I slaughtered him mostly because he was out of practice. I play Rose, my daughter, pretty often, and he was just crushed. So I felt a little bad, but he said he had a great time. I had a great time. It was fun. So I'm looking forward to try to do that a little more often. That was a lot of fun. Still enjoying playing War Machine.
I was jealous.
What about modeling? What about building new stuff, painting things, doing any terrain work? Andrzej, any kind of modeling you've been working on lately?
Well, not much. There's a lot of stuff going on right now. Here, but other than that, I've managed to put together the terrain from the Shadow War starter box, as I've been designing some stuff to match this terrain to get us to the Multiverse store. I've also been doing some test paint jobs for the entire table. I mean, using both the plastic pieces and the laser cut ones.
Cool. So you're extending your offering to be able to mix and match to be blending in nicely with Shadow Wars.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's the same system that the Ruins of Gilead range uses.
Right.
The height of the modules is exactly the same to match the pieces from Shadow War, so it should fit in nicely.
Oh, very cool. Very nice. Excellent. That sounds very cool. How about you, Craig? What have you been painting?
I've been busy. Okay. So I because we have Andrzej on the show, and I knew that Russ and I were going to be playing The Walking Dead, I really wanted to finish a 2x2 board that we could play. And listeners will know that I love waterfront and water. And little spoiler alert, I have this theory, and I think I single-handedly put Andrzej's firstborn through college with my order. But I have enough tiles to do a 4x4, which is a very large board when you're talking 1 foot by 1 foot sections. But my main plan was to be able to do a port, like a pirate port, so to speak. And I painted the water for the waterfront tiles to match the fat mat ocean tiles that go with Blood and Plunder. So I've got a plan, and I've got castle pieces, and I've got tower pieces, and I've got a whole plan. So I did the multiverse. I did one foundation. I did a bunch of the small half foundation pieces, and didn't end up using many of them because 2x2 doesn't give you a lot of room to put stuff around. It ends up looking pretty crowded pretty fast when you've got half a foot of space taken up with the water. But I did some docks. I did one of each type of stair offered. I finished all my printables for the authentic Mexican street food and the newsstand and the newspaper machines and the hot dog stand. So all that was fully painted when we played. And what else did I do? The waterfront pieces and the water, and I then masked off the stone and then sprayed the water with the gloss coat so it looked shiny. So that was awesome. Because I was doing waterfront, of course, I needed some boats. So I did my 3 Blood and Plunder longboats. Good catch, Mr. Blood, on Twitter. And so that'll just give you a little idea of where I think this could be really cool with a port assault for Blood and Plunder. I've been modifying my my war band for my kill team for Shadow Wars, so I've been adding bits and pieces onto my Chaos guys as they level up. I have one guy who is my sort of super sniper now. They can't have sniper rifles because Chaos doesn't have them, but he has a bolter with every modification on it that you can get. So I found all kinds of bits and pieces and glued them all onto my guy's bolter and painted them up, and really cool. I'm really happy with the way they're looking. Finished out my detail on some more GW Adeptus terrain, like the little skull face generators, and did a bunch of Mantic pipes from their industrial line and things like that. And for my waterfront, I wanted to do a bunch of palm trees and stuff, but I didn't want to do like nature encroaching on the city. So I did a bunch of planters, and I resin planters, painted them up to match, and then drilled holes in. And I've been putting all of my palm trees and my low tropical undergrowth things, bushes into those. Also, I finished those up this afternoon, actually. So it's been a busy time trying to get that cool board out. And if you want to see what it looks like, check out my Twitter feed at D6G Craig or the D6 Generation. Russ has been retweeting it all. And you'll be able to see what this multiverse versatile stuff looks like when it's painted up to be sort of like a Caribbean or Mediterranean sort of port city is what I was going for. So what about you, Russ?
Well, yeah, definitely can tell it's going to be ready for Blood and Plunder just as well as it is for zombies, which is pretty impressive.
I think it's going to be awesome.
So I didn't do much, but I mentioned last time I was working on some stuff for our Dungeons and Dragons campaign. I had finished up my daughter's druid, and then I was working on the bear she transforms into. I finished the bear, got all the basting done, and I was really pleased because I'm getting the hang now of airbrushing and using airbrushing to do a little bit of blending. I'm terrible at blending with a brush. I just have no blending skill whatsoever. So generally I cheat with dry brushing or some other, sort of, kind of cover up tricks. But with the airbrush, pretty much anybody can do it. So I was like, oh, this is great. Getting the snout to blend into the fur and things like that. So I was really pleased with how he looks. So very happy with the bear. So that's all set. And now I'm on to my, I think it's Colossal time. So I'm going to start painting up my Signar Colossal because have you seen the new Troll Blood Colossal, Craig?
Yes.
Andrzej, have you seen this thing?
The Sea King?
It's got a giant ship on its back. And it's great because I don't like the Mountain King. The Mountain King Colossal was like, take him or leave him. But there's a giant troll with a ship on his back. How do you not use that? But I can't rationalize getting another Gargantuan when I haven't finished the first one. So I got to finish the Colossal.
There's your impetus right there.
Got to get the Colossal done so I can get the giant troll that carries a boat. I mean, that's got to happen. So that's next because trolls plus boats equals pirates, and that's all good. So cool. So what about other random geeky goodness? Andrzej, like reading any geeky good books, comic books, movies, TV shows? What have you been doing on that sort of front?
Well, I have to admit I've been a bit lazy lately. I mean, I've stick with some video games.
What are you playing?
the first one would be Crawl. It's a really nice indie game. It's a dungeon crawler, but with a very cool twist. I mean, you can play with up to 3 friends on a single screen. And one of you is an adventurer getting through several dungeon levels, and the other ones are some kind of spirits that try to
Stop.
Animate traps and do other stuff that would prevent the other player from getting further. And when one of you manages to kill the one who is an adventurer, he turns into the adventurer himself and tries to get as far as possible. So actually, it's a mix between a classic dungeon crawl and something like a side-scroller beat 'em up.
Yeah.
It's really fast-paced, really fun, and the fact that you can play it with up to 3 people.
Oh, very cool. And it's called
on a single screen. Yeah.
Crow, like the bird? Crow?
No, crawl, like
crawl.
dungeon crawl.
Oh, got it. Okay. And it's you know what platforms it's on?
I think it's PC only, but I'm not sure at
I'll
this
check
point.
it out. That sounds cool. That sounds like the kind of thing I would like. Very cool. Anything else?
Well, I'm super excited for the Fallout miniature game that comes out later this year in November, as far as I can tell. So I've been revisiting Fallout New Vegas. I mean, it didn't grow up on me at the first time when I was playing this, but now I find it really, really nice. So yeah, it got me even more excited for the Multiverse game.
Oh, very good. Very cool. That's awesome. Great. Fallout's such a classic. That game looks really interesting too. So we'll see how that comes out. But it looks so far looking good.
It looks like it's pretty innovative.
Yeah. Craig, how about yourself? What have you been watching, reading, and?
Well, let's see. I have now seen Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 4 times.
Now, is that enough, or are you figuring like you could do 4 more?
I don't know. I feel like I've seen it enough, but I could always see it again.
Okay.
Why are you suggesting something? You want to go see it again? Because I'll go with you.
I could probably see at least. I've only seen it once, so I could see it again.
Well, that's kind of pathetic. Actually.
All right. Yeah, I think
I would be saying that in public.
I feel like I'm not supporting a great film here.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, what was the movie that went up against it and then like faltered and died in the first weekend? I can't remember. But anyway, I loved it. I loved it. We talk all about it in the Lost Chapter, so I won't talk about that.
Right.
I have been giving the Dark Tower series. I've still last episode I said that I had started it and I was a little lukewarm with the first book. And when I first started reading it many, 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 many years ago, long before Audible was a thing, I remember now I finished book 1 and just did not feel the need to read book 2. And it was a little tough getting into book 2. And book 2 is so different from book 1 that I was like, I don't know, but I'm into it now. And now I'm into Wasteland, book 3.
Now you're talking.
And so I like it. I like it a lot. I'm really enjoying it.
Wolves of Kala, baby. That's where it gets Wolves of Kala. That's where it gets awesome.
Is that where it gets awesome?
I like it beginning to end, the whole series, but
yeah. But I know you've always been like a super mega fan.
I've listened to it like I don't even know how many times. Yeah.
So that's what I'm doing there.
Sweet.
On the video game front, I don't remember if I've spoken here about Reese's ridiculous fascination with the Titanic, but my son has developed a bizarre fascination with the Titanic.
Okay.
And
does he sing any
coming from a series of children's books called the I Survived series.
Oh, okay.
And it's I survived a volcano explosion. There's even an I survived 9/11, which I think would be pretty creepy.
That's pretty interesting.
And there's an I survived the Titanic, the sinking of the Titanic. And basically they're these fictional stories that put a 9 or 10-year-old kid into these disasters. And then, spoiler alert from the title, they survive. But,
this sounds pretty creepy.
Yeah.
It is very
I'm not sure how I feel about that. I guess
it's very
on one
creepy.
hand, it's a cool way to teach history, right? Important history.
Exactly.
On the other hand, I don't know.
It feels like it's focusing on the wrong things, but but it's very popular with little boys in the first grade, and I'll tell you, all of his friends love it. There was about a 3-week period where that's what they played every recess. They played the sinking of the Titanic.
Oh, wow.
And apparently they all survived, so that's good.
Who gets to play Leonardo DiCaprio?
Yeah, I don't. Well, that's the thing now. There's only one kid in his little clique that's actually seen the movie.
Oh, right.
So he comes to me. I haven't seen the movie in 20 years. I totally forget. All I remember is it was god awful long, and it felt like 2 totally different movies.
Yes.
So he's like, "Hey, Daddy, like 20 minutes before bedtime, can we watch the movie?" And I'm thinking, yeah, someday, but not today because you're 20 minutes, and I know it's more than that. So I'm like, let's look at it, buddy, and we'll see, like, is it on demand? And I was like, wow, it's $3. It's holy crap. It's 3 hours and 20 minutes long.
Epic is what it is. So
I was like, well, you're not going to watch it now. And maybe like someday when we've got that much time to just hang out and watch a movie. And he's like, oh, I want to watch it. I want to watch it. He's watching he finds videos on YouTube. There's video games, all kinds of like Roblox videos on YouTube and all kinds of Survive the Titanic games. So he's seen all those. Then my wife came home and was like, do you forget like there's a massive sex scene and like all those people dying? And I was like, well, I'm okay with all the people dying. I mean, it's a movie. He's like, how many people died in half the Marvel movies we've watched? But I was like, oh, this is a big sex scene. That's right. So then we had to sit him down and go, okay, you're not going to, maybe when you're bigger, blah, blah, blah. Then he goes online and he finds the scene where the Titanic is sinking on YouTube.
Right.
So I'm out mowing the lawn and I come in and I hear the scene where the Titanic is sinking. And I come in and I'm like, oh, okay, well, we're going to watch this once and I'm going to use it as a teachable moment. And then you're not going to watch it again. And then I realized that Rose and Jack are speaking in Spanish because he's found a dubbed version. I'm like, you don't even know what they're saying. He's like, no, but it's really neat. And I'm like, okay, yeah. So all of these people are safe. They're all actors, but you need to understand that this really happened and many, many, many people died. And he's like, I know. So anyway, so that fascination is still there. And so we're building the Titanic, him and I together, or a ship that would be vaguely Titanic looking actually in Minecraft.
So now what scale are you building it like? In life-size scale to Minecraft?
Yeah, I mean,
really,
kind of.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's impressive.
I mean, it's probably not quite as big as it should be.
Yeah,
but it's big enough to make it obnoxious laying down all those bricks. I'll tell you that.
Can you fit like 1,000 Minecraft folks on there? That'd be awesome.
Probably if they were like, well, yeah. Once you get all the different levels in, yeah.
Did you decide to put the engine room on deck 13 or 14? Where'd you end up with that?
Yeah, the engine is something Reese did on his own, and it's on deck 1.
Fair enough. All right, sure.
It's a minecart on 2 little tracks powered by redstone. And who knew he even knew how to do any of that?
Sweet.
So it's just
did he have the
zipping back and forth over and over again. He's like, Daddy, this is what people use to make engines.
Does he have the wires running up to the bridge? You can flip it on and off from.
No, we don't have a bridge yet. We've only built. We haven't even built up to the main deck yet. I think we might be reaching the boat.
That's awesome, Craig. I'm proud of you. You guys building in virtual world space there.
It's neat.
That's awesome. Neat. Yeah.
And then the other thing that's been taking up my geekly time is, of course, 40K 8th edition is coming.
Yeah, it
and
is.
Games Workshop, this ain't your grandfather's Games Workshop, the way they've been dealing with this rollout. They didn't keep it close to their vest and then launch everything all at the last minute. These guys have been giving information every day for weeks now. So I've been following that, getting kind of excited about that, bringing some stuff down from the attic, kind of been looking at the 2 factions in the starter, and sort of hovering, if you will, around several different message boards, thinking, oh my God, what would have happened if between Rogue Trader and 2nd edition 40K, there had been such a thing as the internet? Games Workshop would have been firebombed. It's insane. The things these people are complaining about now is unbelievable to me when I think back on those beaky Marines, and then the Marines totally changed. Oh my God, it's just craziness. So, I feel like I need to shower every time I dip into any of those forums. But anyway, that's me. What about you, Russ?
Well, real quick. So still playing Mass Effect. Both I am, as both of my daughters are. In fact, my oldest daughter just solved it. So that's the joy of being in high school and having the time to play Mass Effect for 8 hours on a Saturday. We'll do that. I'm only about 40% through the game, but I'm really enjoying it. And I think I mentioned before on the show, I know there's been a lot of bad PR around the game. But I'm loving it. It's got all the things I like about Mass Effect in it. So having a good time with that. As Craig mentioned, saw Guardians of the Galaxy 2, really enjoyed it. We obviously talked more about that in the Lost Chapter. I've been binge watching Twin Peaks, Craig.
Yes, I think I saw that on Twitter.
Now, Andrzej, did you ever watch Twin Peaks? Was that ever a thing for you?
Actually, no. I mean, it's one of the titles that's still on the list of the things that I have to watch at some point, but didn't manage to.
Yeah, so what's interesting about this show, so here's my analysis of Twin Peaks. So I've not gotten to the new stuff yet. So the new stuff just started airing this week. So I think most listeners know it's kind of a big deal, but there were 2 seasons of Twin Peaks originally aired. The original season aired in 1990. The second season came out right after that. Then it kind of ended unfinished, and then there was a movie, a 2-hour movie, and that was it. And now Showtime is bringing it back, and so as part of that, they've remastered the original video, put it all out on Hulu, and I've been watching it. And what's interesting is the first season was generally people thought was great, and people generally thought the second season kind of fell apart. But what I'm finding interesting is I found the first season a little boring. And that's how I remembered it too, by the way. So I remember watching the original stuff when it first came out and remembering thinking I liked the first season and the second season got too weird. But what's interesting is now watching it, I'm actually liking the second season better than the first season. And I think the reason for that is when Twin Peaks first came out, you didn't have a lot of quirky supernatural shows, right? Like you have to remember Twin Peaks predates X-Files. It predates Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It predates all that stuff. There were no real supernatural shows like this. And so in the first season, it's almost like a murder mystery with just a hint of supernatural. In the second season, it goes off the charts supernatural with super duper supernatural stuff. Like he's seeing visions that are definitely real. And there's like people getting possessed and all kinds of stuff that is like clearly supernatural, non-reality stuff happening. And that works for me now because I think there's been a lot of shows since then that do that kind of stuff. But I don't know. Maybe that's why it's working for me. But I'm really enjoying the second season of Twin Peaks far more than I remember enjoying it the first time. I don't know, whatever that's worth.
I've actually heard that the new stuff goes even further in that direction. So
yeah, which I think now in 2017 totally stands up because there's been a lot of crazy, wacky, supernatural stuff is just kind of, in a post-Twilight, post-Buffy, whatever else, post superhero world where, everything's got a superhero in it now. It's no big deal, right? So I'm enjoying it. I'm looking forward to more of that. I'm looking forward to seeing the new stuff once I get through everything. Also, I'm reading a new book, Craig. I'm reading a book called Rookie Privateer by Jamie McFarlane. And I think this might be, I can't tell if it's his first book or not. It's very much, it's not, I don't think it's young adult. It's definitely a coming of age story. It's a sci-fi book about a guy who lives in an asteroid belt mining family situation and becomes, through a bunch of quirks of circumstance, becomes a privateer with his best friends who are all like on their little, podball team and all them growing up and everything and the whole thing. And it's actually pretty good. What I like about it is it's kind of got that hard sci-fi element where they get into some interesting stuff. And this is going to sound weird. So by telling you this, you're probably going to be less likely to want to read the book. But like, I've never read a sci-fi book. Whenever you see sci-fi books talk about spaceships and what they do, almost invariably, they never talk about the bathrooms or where the toilets are or how any of that stuff works. This book, I think, has a chapter and a half dedicated to cleaning the plumbing and the toilets of a spaceship, which I know sounds dumb, but somehow it's interesting to me. Now, maybe it's because I'm a super engineering nerd. I don't know, but I thought it was fascinating that this author took all this time to figure out how all this would work. And I just thought it was really interesting. So I don't know, maybe that doesn't sell it, but I just thought it was really cool. So I'm really enjoying Rookie Privateer. It's a short read. It's very, very light. But I'm really liking it. So check that out as well.
Interesting.
So is that achievements?
That is achievement.
There we go.
Well, ahoy, me mateys. This be Captain Barbossa of the Black Pearl. If it be lost treasure you be looking for, well, I'll send you down to Davy Jones' locker. But if it be lost chapters, well then, you've come to the right place. Go to the D6 Generation website and click on the stack of books labeled the D6 Lost Chapters. There you'll find all the details on how you can acquire these beauties, and you won't even need a treasure map.
Hey, welcome back, and spring is in the air, and a young geek's thoughts turn to images of vacation, right?
Travel
And vacation. And any geek who's thinking about travel and vacation would do themselves a grave disservice to not think about Geek Nation tours.
How can you not go to Gen Con 50 with Geek Nation tours? You have to. You have to, right?
Especially at this point in the calendar year, it's really the only way to go.
It really is. You got to come down, see us at Gen Con. The best thing about, again, the Gen Con tour from Geek Nation Tours is really, it's unbelievable who terrorists get you able to sit down with and just chat with in the industry. It just blows my mind. And this time around, it's going to be a lot of dungeon. What's it this year, Craig? I think it's dungeon crawls, isn't it?
No, it's zombies.
Oh, zombies, right. Oh, Mantic's going to be there, right?
Last year was done. Yep.
Yeah.
Not only that, you actually at the Geek Nation Tours travelers will be having dinner with all the Weta Workshop team.
Yeah.
The Mantic folks. Every night they're going to be bringing different industry insiders to dinner with you guys. There's a role playing game where they've actually mathematically modeled out your real chances to shoot, so it's more real than fun. But it's a really cool concept, and the designers are going to run a walking role-playing session with you as you walk through Indianapolis, and each traveler is going to get one of those rings that has the spinny rings. That's the D10. Mm-hmm. And you're going to actually have a game run by the designers of this game, who are going to run the game for you as you walk from the event hall to your hotel.
Oh, it's awesome.
It sounds really crazy cool.
And I can't see. We've had all these guys on the show before. So Ronnie from Mantic's going to be there, which is going to be great. Weta's going to be there. Giant Killer Robots, which I backed, going to be there because the Weta guys are going to be there. That Cryptozoic's going to be there showing off. So much good stuff. You get behind the scenes look, insider's treatment to this stuff. You get to play with the Kentucky Fried Gamers earlier in the week. So much great gaming, so many great experiences. So where do you go for all that, Craig?
You got to go to geeknationtours.com and check it out. Go to the tours button and try your best to ignore all the other amazing tours you have to that they have on offer to check out the Gen Con one, because you got a guaranteed room, you got guaranteed access.
There's no way to get to
really
Gen Con.
Is the only way to go to Gen Con.
At this point, you got to be doing Geek Nation Tours. So check it all out, geeknationtours.com.
And now, in an attempt to bring a small amount of dignity and decorum to this otherwise base form of entertainment, and I use the term loosely, I am proud to present...
Oh, get on with it. It's time for App of the Ep.
Seriously, Wakeland? I used to have my own segment, now I'm relegating to announcing this pat.
Hey, you're lucky we still use you. Hey, and welcome back to another App of the Ep. Got kind of an unusual one here, but I think you'll like it. It's called Old Man's Journey. And this one, or just Old Man, I think is what I normally see it as when you've installed it on your iPhone. I don't know if it's got an Android. I found it on iOS, and I was captivated by just some of the art imagery in this game. So much so that I decided to go ahead and spring the $4.99 to buy the app. So I have mixed feelings about some of these games. The free-to-play ones where you become freemium and you pay a lot, I really don't care for those as much. I do enjoy quite a few of them. But invariably they're all got timers in them and everything else to try to get you to spend more to go faster kind of thing. This game is an interesting one because it's $5, or as I like to say, one fancy coffee price point, right? And really, what I like about it a lot is just the feeling you get while playing this game. It's not particularly challenging. There are very mild puzzles in it. What makes this game really interesting is the art style is just really interesting to me. The music and sound is just perfect. It's a very relaxing game. And you just sort of watch this old man go on this, for lack of a better walkabout. And as he does, you start to learn more about his past and his background. And it's almost like he's reminiscing. There's a lot of what the kids call feels in this game, right? Just a very emotional game, but it's not a complicated game. It's almost like reading a light book or watching a short show. And it's not particularly long. I think if you blasted through it and really didn't spend time in every nook and cranny, you could probably get done with the thing in less than an hour, maybe 2 hours, maybe. So it's not very long. If you take your time and really savor it, it'll go a little longer. But the way I look at it, people might say, well, it's $5 for a game that lasts under 2 hours. That seems like a lot of money, but a fancy coffee is $5, and that lasts you 15 minutes. So I think there's something here. I love the art style. I just love the feeling of the game, and I love the storytelling concept of it. I think it's very much worth the $5 and a really nice experience. So if you're looking for a really sort of a different kind of experience, a game that sort of gives you the warm fuzzies while you play it, and it's not particularly hard, just sort of a way to relax when you have a few moments to yourself, check it out on iOS. It's Old Man's Journey. Let me know what you think.
Thank you for listening to another scintillating edition of App of the App, a segment in which,
hey, less of that, more just getting on with the show.
Seriously, Wakeland, you are like school in summer. No class.
Hey, welcome back. And since, as you know, we've got Andrzej here from Multiverse Gaming. And we will indoctrinate him into the chosen of the D6 generation with our usual rituals, get his background story, and talk a little bit about MDF and laser cut terrain, which just keeps getting bigger and bigger on the gaming scene. Just last episode, we were talking about how important terrain is, and that terrain train just keeps on choo-chooing. So Andrzej, welcome to the show. Again.
Welcome. Hi, guys.
So let me just tell you a little bit about why I sort of reached out to Andrzej actually a couple months ago when I was really into my Marvel mode, and I wanted to do Marvel, and I've been playing Marvel, but I don't have any city terrain set that did 3x3 well. I could do 4x4, but I didn't have 3x3, so I was looking at a bunch of the options, and I just stumbled across Multiverse Gaming. Because I've got to say, Andrzej, the thing that really intrigued me the most about Multiverse Gaming and all the stuff you've got going on there is the your system that you've got, the versatile system that gives you these. They're basically 1 foot by 1 foot because you're European, though. You call it 30 centimeters by 30 centimeters. We'll forgive you that little quirk. But the thing is, it actually goes up and flat, so that you've got multiple levels, and that really intrigued me to the point where I have bought 2 sets now, so I can actually build a giant, more than 4x4, and I have really great plans for Blood and Plunder for a giant Mediterranean city port, Russ, that you're gonna love when I finish it all up. But
I'm actually looking forward to seeing the board you're going to come up with. So
it's gonna be great. But first, we have a couple questions that we always ask, Andrzej, when we have a new guest on. Question 1 is the big one. Are you now, or have you ever been, a gamer?
Well, yeah. I mean, I have been a gamer since I was like 10 or so. Got into miniature gaming when I was 12, I think. Getting my first box of single pose Wood Elf Archers from the 5th edition of Warhammer Fantasy Battle, and
yes.
I was gaming or painting or converting stuff for like past 20 years. So Yeah, actually, I can say that I am and I have been a gamer for quite some time right now.
Nice. Now you were you in miniature gaming from the beginning? Did you get into any other? Did you ever dabble in board games or maybe role playing games, or are you purely a passionate about miniatures?
Actually, I did all of that. I mean, the first serious tabletop game I got into was the old Star Wars card game from Decipher.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The one that died in like 2003, something like that. And then it was mostly miniature games, but also some card games, some board games, of course. A bit of role playing, but not too much. Right now, I'm mostly involved in miniature games and just some board games with friends from time to time.
Well, very cool. And
what are your miniature games of choice now?
Right now, actually, it's funny because when you ask me if I am a gamer, apart from doing this stuff for a living, actually, the stuff I designed for Multiverse is the stuff I would like to play with. So, for example, when I got into a Batman miniature game, which I still play from time to time, that was when the Dark City range started. Then recently I got into Frostgrave, so that's when the Ruins of Gilead came out. And in the middle, I got back to Necromunda, so there was time to bring out the Industrial Terrain and Dead Man's Hand, so it was time for the Tombstone range of Wild West Terrain. It's always like that. I mean, I get into a certain game and I decided, okay, now I need some terrain pieces to go along with it. And yeah, actually, the three games of choice right now for me are Batman miniature game, Frostgrave, and a bit of Blood Bowl. Nice. So that's it at the moment.
So basically, It's the stuff you're interested in. You're building terrain for what you want on your table, and then you're like, I just, probably other people want this too, right?
Excuse me?
And then probably other people want it too because you like it. You build what you love, and you're figuring other people will be passionate about that.
Yeah, I mean, I always hope it will come out that way, but it's not always like that. But I think that we may come back to this one later when we go into the specifics regarding the company and some of the ranges.
Sure.
All right. Well, funny you should mention that. How did you get it? So you were a gamer and you played all these different miniatures games, and obviously you have kind of eclectic tastes where you're playing some superhero stuff and some fantasy. How did that, like, where did you first begin working on or come into the industry as a professional? Where did you sort of segue into beginning Multiverse Gaming?
Actually, it's a bit convoluted. I mean, I have always wanted to get into making models, miniatures, and stuff. I have tried my hand at sculpting for quite some time. Not to a great success, I must say. But later on, in about 2010, I have started a hobby blog dedicated to 15mm miniatures, and there were quite a lot of terrain projects there. And it was like 2 years ago. There were a couple of things happening at the moment. On the one hand, I found out about a laser cutting shop here in Krakow that actually let me test out the technology and see what I can come up with and just put some personal projects together using the laser cut stuff. And at the same time, I've been a PhD candidate at the university here and working as a teaching assistant. And I knew at the time that in like half a year or so, there will be some financial difficulties in the said job, and I just have to figure out some new way to get some revenue that hopefully won't involve early modern literature anymore. I have decided to start the company on a whim, so to say. So I have tested the technology in like January 2015, and Multiverse started in April, so like 3 months later.
Well, that's pretty quick.
So that's yeah. I mean, I think it was a bit too quick. Come think of it right now. I mean, I could have done some of the early stuff better, but learning about what's not perfect at first is also both fun and quite important part of all this stuff. So yeah, that's it.
Well, what was some of the inspiration for your earlier stuff? I mean, how did you sort of come to the realization there were certain kinds of niches in the terrain area that weren't being fulfilled? Was it 15 millimeter? You're like, man, we need more 15 millimeter terrain out there. There's not a lot of options for people. What kind of sparked your, this will be the first thing I'm going to try making, because I haven't seen a lot of it.
The first thing was that, like you say, there wasn't a lot of 50 millimeter stuff out there. And there was actually a boom for trying out 15mm Star Wars at the time. There was a company that did some non-Stormtroopers. There were some, heroes that quite resembled the movie versions in 15mm. So I did some stuff like the Endo Bunker and some similar items. But actually, the more important thing for me was that the Night Models have announced that they will be bringing out the printed version of Batman rulebook. And I actually knew that there isn't a lot of suitable terrain out there. So I focused on that, and I think it was a wise move at the point. I mean, the Dark City range was what helped to put the company on its feet in the first months or so, and in the first year perhaps.
And so, for listeners who aren't familiar with your work, what is exactly the Dark City? What sort of well, I mean, obviously it's Batman, so. What did you focus on for the terrain that needed to be made for that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not only for Batman, of course, but mostly it's terrain for a modern American cityscape, but with a bit of darker twist, something that could resemble, scenography for Barton's Batmans. Something in the vein of 80s and early 90s superhero or neo-noir movies, something like that.
Yeah. Well, it's a really cool idea, and I think that's so. It sounds to me like you kind of played around in 15 millimeter just to get the hang of things, and then you saw the opportunity with the Dark City, which you went for, 28 to 35 millimeter, buildings, as you said, urbanscape. They look great. I'm looking at them now. A lot of cool stuff from vehicles and brownstones, and it's very stackable. Sort of. What was your, what were you thinking about? How? I mean, these are MDF, right? And what were you thinking about, like the right way to do MDF was, and what were you excited about how to make these assemblable and come out right for someone who was the other side of the world ordering your stuff?
Actually, there were two things that seemed the most important for me when it came to the laser cut stuff. I mean, a lot of the kits that were available back there, I mean, it has changed a lot over the last 2 years or so. They were actually, boxes with a bit of engraving here and there. There wasn't a lot of 3D details. So doing these kits with 2 or more layers glued upon each other to give the impression of a 3D facade of a building or stuff like that. That was the one thing that could make these kits better in terms of aesthetics. And on the other hand, what seemed and it still seems the most important to me in the MDF or HDF terrain is that it allows you to design stuff that is really modular and to introduce new pieces into the existing ranges quite easily. So adding stuff like additional floors, the fire escape stairs that you can remove, and so on and so on. That was actually another point of focus, to make this stuff as modular, as customizable as possible.
Well, I think that's you really nailed that. I'm looking at one of my favorite pieces in your range is the Monarch Theater from the Dark City range, and it, as you say, it has that. I mean, you could just get away with a rectangular box, but you've done so much more. There's a lot of little detailing around the edges, but there's also sort of this like, I don't know how you describe it, like neo-Gothic, sort of like these big pieces coming up that give it a very grand look. And then you have the marquee that's three-dimensionally coming out with the name Monarch in 3D on there. And it just really feels like a fully realized, highly detailed piece of terrain, much more so than a lot of the stuff we see at MDF, prior to this, which was just basically a square box, right? And you really pulled it off. Looks amazing.
Thank you. I'm really glad you say that. And well, that was the goal, to give that kind of an impression. Yeah.
Did it take a lot of iterations of something like this? I mean, is it the kind of thing where you just kind of look, you have a vision in your mind and it comes together, or is it the kind of thing that you have the vision and then you have to go through a lot of iterations figuring out how to actually make it work? Laser cutting bits together. How many times do you go through a design before you really kind of figure it out?
Actually, it depends. I mean, sometimes the most simple pieces need like 3 or 4 prototypes, and sometimes some of the more complicated ones are good at the first go. So, for example, in the case of Monarch, there were some tabs that were misaligned, but other than that, I was pretty happy with the first version that I have tried out. And on the other hand, there were some smaller accessory pieces that needed like 2 or 3 iterations. So it really depends. Sometimes just the connections are done in a way that needs some redoing, especially if I'm trying some new stuff when it comes to how the pieces fit together, or how some detailing is done.
Oh, very cool.
It looks beautiful, and I love the printable stuff that you can put on some of your stuff. Like you've done some movie posters and things like that kind of go with the theater. That really just add that next level on top of everything else that you've done, which is just a great little touch.
Thanks. I mean, many people can do the stuff like that on their own, just looking for posters and such in Google Graphics or such. But if they have it available at hand or at the web store, I think it's just easier for them to do it that way.
Well, I should say my first 2 pieces that I bought because I wanted to try it out and see how things worked and how they compared to what it looked like on the website, because the website is great. You've done something that a lot of other MDF laser cut companies haven't really struck onto yet. All your stuff is on there painted, which I think is a huge benefit to it. Just makes it look that much better. So I got the fast food, the Dos Cavalleras 2 Skulls Mexican street food eatery, and I got the newsstand, and they're very small pieces, but they're very flavorful, and I love the way they came together. But I really loved it when I started. I just did what you suggested. I went and found a bunch of magazine covers, and of course I'm a big fan of Guardians of the Galaxy, and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 just came out. So I found every magazine cover with anything about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 on it, and I made tiny little versions of every one of those, and then I did a bunch of other ones. I got a bunch of White Dwarfs, and I got a bunch of Dragon magazines, and I just shrank them all down. And those are the magazines on my newsstand, and I think it's awesome. Most people won't notice it; they won't look at that level, but if you do, you can see some iconic covers of like Dragon magazine and things like that. And that really just brings the whole thing up to the next level, and I just love the detail of that like added little touch.
I really like your idea. I mean, for the piece that is shown in the Webster's showcase, I actually printed out some Marvel comics because I wanted to use it with Batman and stuff. And the assumption was that in the DC universe, the Marvel is, the fictional universe where the superhero stories happen, and then there won't be DC comics in the newsstand because that's just our universe here. So,
right.
Yeah,
I love it. Now, what I think is really interesting about this is you started to get onto it, but when did you sort of? Well, there are a lot of people are doing this. How did you figure out how to market your brand? I mean, obviously, people discovered you. The Batman scenery in particular really took off for you. How did you get your name out there? How did you get people discovering what you were doing?
Actually, at the beginning, I have reached out to some people I knew were doing blogs or podcasts on the Batman game, or in general some modern or pop stuff. But after that, it was mostly the word of mouth. I mean, there are some people, especially in groups like the Arkham City Limits, that I am very grateful to. I mean, Multiverse wouldn't be anywhere close to where it is now if not for some people who got the terrain, liked it, and recommended it to other folk out there. So. Actually, it's not like I did some job that on the marketing front that would be, I don't know, especially successful. It was their recommendations and their word of mouth that helped put the brand out there.
So you basically got involved in essentially the social folks, right? Whether it's podcasts or blogs, people who are really into the hobby, who were really into, and I think it sounds to me like you made a name for yourself by picking a particular set of terrain that wasn't well served, urban settings that fit sort of into that comic booky sort of world when the comic book miniature games are really hitting the market, found the shows servicing those and got your name out there on those, which I think is super smart.
Thanks. I mean, that was the idea, but like I said, the better job at this was done by people who just after that bought the terrain and said that, okay, that's great. I will recommend it to my friends, to other people in the set groups. So yeah, it's mostly word of mouth actually.
Okay, very
Sounds
cool.
familiar.
Yes, exactly. That's awesome. So how did you? When did you start to know that you were onto something? I mean, when did you kind of go from this is sort of an interesting thing to try to make a go of to, oh man, this is actually working out? Like, when did that sort of leap happen, and what was sort of the defining moment there for you?
I think it was like a month after I have launched the web store, because ever since the beginning, I wanted to get the news about the new kits out there on Beasts of War. And after 2 or 3 times, I mean, I really was nagging to the guys at Beasts of War. And they just, I don't know, perhaps they didn't like what they have seen and they didn't feature the early stuff. And about a month after the web store was launched, I have noticed, I just went there to read some news. And then there it was, I mean, the news piece about the old diner from the Dark City range, and quite a lot of comments from people who like the piece really well under the news piece. And it was this like, okay, they weren't too eager to feature that when I contacted them, and now they are doing it out of their own will, and there are some other people who like the kit. So okay, now I may be onto something here.
Great. So basically that was your breakout moment when Beasts of War featured you. That's pretty awesome. Good stuff. That's fantastic. So what are you doing? How do you manufacture your stuff? I mean, obviously don't give any trade secrets away, but you're obviously not still going down the street to that place that happened to have a laser cutter. Do you have your own facilities now? Is there anything you can share what you're using today to make this all happen?
I mean, when it came to me that I'm actually onto something, and there's a reason to expand, sort of. I got the first laser cutter in like half a year after the company launched, and then the second one a year later. But if it comes to the tools of the trade, it's mostly some graphics software, some vector graphics software like Inkscape, and some other ones for 3D models and so on. And then it's just two laser cutters that run in the background when I'm packing stuff, responding to emails, and so on.
So how many hours a day is your laser cutter running?
Well, there are two machines, each running 8 to 10 hours daily.
Wow.
Depending on the workload at the given moment.
And are they pretty much set and forget, or do you got to kind of watch them? Are they kind of the kind of thing where they're every once in a while something happens and you got to go back in and reset them or something? Or are they kind of? I know when they first came out, they were very fiddly, but I'm sure they've advanced quite a bit since then.
Yeah, I mean, these are not the most advanced ones that are available in the market, but it's a rare occasion that something like that happens, some kind of error. But you have to, change the HDF sheet, pack the stuff that is there, clean some of it, and so on. So it's not like it's fully automated. But it doesn't require constant supervision. It's much more or less involving than doing all the stuff by hand. If these were single, fully customized pieces. So there's quite a lot of automatic stuff to it.
Very cool. And what's the biggest improvement that's happened since you sort of started now? Like, what's the biggest change? You're like, oh, thank goodness this is working. The biggest advancement, I would say.
Frankly speaking, I don't know. I mean, I can't come up with something that would be a single big improvement. Most of the time, it's when you start up the production line, however small or big it is, you notice that there are a lot of steps along the line, and at each of the subsequent steps there are some tiny details that you can correct, like things like the way you pack stuff, or how the sheets with the parts are marked so you can sort them easily, and most of the time it's like shaving off these seconds or something like that from each subsequent step, so you get these things done faster. But there's no single leap that would take me from one level of manufacturing to the other. I cannot think of anything like that.
A little bit earlier, you seemed to be, you were about to say something about something that you really enjoyed, but then it didn't really work out well as an item on the shop. Early on, was that was there something that you had planned and then it didn't? What was that?
I mean, there were several such items. I mean, there are things that you can work on for a week or so, something really elaborate. And then when it is released, people like it, and there is a lot of positive comments, but it doesn't really sell that well. And on the other hand, there are pieces that you can design in 15 minutes or a single evening, and they sell like 5 times better than the ones I have mentioned earlier. It was like this back in January earlier this year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have released the Guardians of Traffic for the Versatile Dark City, and it's quite a detailed piece with some really nice stuff going on, and it was well received, but it didn't sell too well. I mean,
really?
Yeah, just I don't know, it didn't catch on. But I don't know. A couple of days later, the chain link fence set has released, and designing it was like, I don't know, an hour maybe or two. And I don't know, people just went into the store and bought like 2 or 3 sets each. And I was like, come on, I was working on this one for a week and on this one for an hour. And hey, what's going on there, right? So
it's hard to predict.
Well, I gotta say, the Guardians of Traffic is one of the main things that drew my attention. That in my big order that I placed after I finished putting together my small order, that was the first thing on my list. I mean, it looks amazing. It features prominently in most of your promotional pictures, which I think is genius because it looks awesome, both from afar as a piece, but also up close. The buttresses look cool. I mean, they do really cool things to the streets around them to give you cover and things like that. So I'm surprised that doesn't sell well because I think it's beautiful. And on the website, you say that it was this is the other thing that actually drew me to you, was a lot of your inspirations come from the real world. And where so it took about a week to design, you said, and where did the inspiration come from for that piece?
Actually, these are based on statues in Ohio at one of the bridges in Cleveland. So working on this kit was mostly about getting the right reference materials, getting the scale right, and so on. And there are a lot of other pieces that are also inspired by the existing buildings, and that's. That's one of the most fun parts about this job. I mean, when you see that someone from the location where the stuff you have been inspired by lives in, you just feel that, okay, I have done something right. I mean,
right.
like a week ago, a guy from Cleveland have ordered the Guardians of Traffic, and I was like, okay. That's nice. That's satisfying. Yeah.
Right. That's very cool.
Well, and they're right out of Gotham, Russ.
Really?
If you looked at this,
I'm looking at them
right out of any Batman movie you'd care to mention.
Yes. Or Cleveland, as we've learned out.
Or Cleveland, as the case may be.
That is awesome. What's the big is there like a big lesson you've learned? Like I wish I knew that when I started. Like, is there like one thing, if someone was going to do this, would you be like, okay, well, just one thing before you start that I should just share with you? What would that be?
Well, I think that there are actually 2 things. The first one is related to what we have talked about in like a minute ago or so. That's well, you just can't predict what will catch on. I mean, you can have some predictions, but it's more more often than not, it's a surprise about what catches on and what doesn't. And the other thing is how to say that? Just don't rush it. I mean, if you have to do another prototype, another test, if you have all the parts on a sheet and so on, just do it. I mean, I have rushed some of the pieces and had to redo them in the last moment. Or that's it.
Don't rush.
Don't rush it. Yeah,
that's good advice, and I also like the advice of it's hard to predict what's going to be great. That's something that being in software and building, I think anytime you do any kind of endeavor, it's really hard to know what people are going to really fall in love with. What are you guys working on now? So what's right now in your pipeline? What are you focused on now? What new things are you got coming down right at this moment?
Well, there's a lot of stuff in the pipeline actually. The new range that was released back in March, the Ruins of Gilead, is actually the first of Multiverse's ranges that uses the one-up system. There's a new system for modular terrain that utilizes 3 types of pieces: the pillars, the wall panels, and the floors, to allow you to build actually any kind of structure within a certain genre. And we have several other ranges using this very system in a pipeline. The next one will be Fortress of Prometheus, the one that will fit quite well with the existing Shadow War Armageddon terrain sets. That's
Oh, cool!
I thought that immediately. I was looking at them, I'm like, that's totally for Shadow Wars. Is exactly what that is.
Yeah, I mean that's that's the idea to fit into that aesthetic. And there will be other ranges using this system quite soon as well. I mean, the idea is to have a sort of building blocks, like you have, I don't know, Legos. You have the knights, you have these spaceships, and so on. But then you can take it apart and put it together any way you'd like. Mm-hmm. So, for example, the Ruins of Gilead range consists mainly of different types of Gothic ruins. And then the Fortress of Prometheus will have some a bit retro tech industrial pieces. But throwing these 2 ranges together, you can get some really nice, techno-Gothic pieces for 40K or Shadow War, for that matter. So that's what I'm working on at the moment. I think that some previews should hit the web in a week or so. I mean, they should be available at the beginning of May, but then I've started toying around with prototypes, adding some new connection options, and it just took a bit longer than I have predicted.
I think the connectivity looks awesome. I can't wait for these to come up. So basically, by the time folks are listening to this, some of this new hotness will be out on their website for preview photos. That's awesome.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Well, we'll keep an eye. End of May. Beat you looking for, right? That sounds good.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, excellent. Well, Craig, any other questions? Because I'm so excited. I can't wait till these things come out.
No, I can't say. I mean, it's been a while since this has happened. Like, everybody knows I love terrain, so you got to take it with a grain of salt. But this stuff really sucked me in. And again, I mean, and I don't know that we've hit it exactly. The versatile system that you have, which is basically starts at street level, but then you can build it up with foundations and platforms. You can go as high as you want, and that's really where the Guardians of Traffic sort of shines, because you can have multiple levels, and you've got stairs and all kinds of cool like ways to connect those different levels that look like verandas and patios. Very European sort of layout to me. And then you've got bridges that connect them, and the roads can go underneath. And I haven't seen
subways.
Anybody else do that.
And the subways, Craig, elevated trains. That's just nowhere. Who does that? It's awesome looking. And you got the train cars and everything. That's great.
Yeah, exactly. And it all incorporates, because it's all one system. It all kind of goes together. And that's just, I just wanted to reiterate that, because it reminded me a lot of Mantic Games' Dead Zone, building up as well as out. And except that what you're doing is you're literally, the street is multiple levels, and then the buildings go on top of that for even more levels. And it was just really the innovative way that you had brought that sort of three-dimensionality to the tabletop just really impressed me. So I just
thank you.
I just want to say kudos to you on that again, and I wanted to make sure that I brought that up, because that's really what sucked me in. And because of the multiple levels, the Guardians of Traffic just built right into that to make it. I mean, I can't tell you how many foundations. I can tell you, I got 7 or 8 foundations, just so I can do all kinds of.
Got everything covered.
I'm going to be building straight up to the sky. It's going to be awesome.
So Andrzej,
before I even put a building on there.
Andrzej, if listeners are getting excited like Craig is, where should they go on the internet to find out all your late hotness and what's out there and to get your stuff?
Well, actually, the best place to look for it would be the web store at multiversegamingterrain.com. But if you want to look for some previews, for some prototype pieces, the best place to go would be our Facebook page. Just type in Multiverse Gaming in the search field, and it should be the first one that pops out. So
that's awesome. Well, Jay, thank you so much for giving us the detail in the background. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back, and we're going to talk about the Walking Dead board game, which is our miniature game, which is another fantastic venue for all this great terrain from Multiverse Gaming. So another great place to use all those awesome buildings Craig was just talking about.
Which we did.
We did.
This is Total Fangirl. Regular Jane most days, total fangirl when the moment strikes. Han shot first. Starbuck is a guy. And Lestat, now there's a vampire. Hey everyone, this is Nicole, your Total Fangirl. You can follow me on Twitter at Nicole Wakelin and check out my blog, TotalFangirl.com. Our shout out is to all of our wonderful supporters over at Patreon. Head to patreon.com/the D6 Generation and you too can support the show. Last episode, I was talking about a Star Trek spoof called The Orville and what I thought and whether or not it seemed like something that was actually going to make a go of it or if it was going to, crash and burn. Shortly after that, trailer first came out. Then there's another trailer, not for the Orville this time, but for an actual, real, genuine Star Trek property. It's called Discovery, and it's going to be on CBS. Their new on-demand thing, which I just forgot the name of. So it's going to be on CBS All Access, which I just looked up. It's $5.99 a month in the U.S. I don't even know if you can get it anywhere else. So it's not really free. It's going to be on the CBS All Access, but it is a new Star Trek, and it's supposed to take place not long before the original series, before Kirk and Spock and all that, not very long before. But here's the weird thing. So watch the trailer. You can Google it, or I wrote about this on my blog, so you can go to TotalFangirl.com. You can see the trailer and read my thoughts about it there. But if you watch the trailer, it's very much in the vein of what we're seeing in the movies right now. And if you have seen any of the movies right now, they're much darker and grittier than the original Star Trek was. And the whole look of them, they're truly like turn on a light. Like it's very, very dark. Things are gloomy. The uniforms are even different. They have these very dark uniforms with blue, but it's not like this bright, happy, cheery bluebird blue. It's sort of a dark blue. So it's a very dark set, a dark universe. It's not a cheery place at all. And it doesn't really match with what the original series was. So this has, female captain and a female second in command. And it's sort of about how that second in command kind of takes over and where they go. And there's Klingons in there that we're fighting with. And look, I made myself part of the Federation that we're fighting with. And there's all sorts of peril, and there's some space battles, and there's some people out there in their, suits flying around in space. And that looks all pretty cool because that's all neat and that's all Star Trek. But it's hard to reconcile this with how close they say it is to what we saw when Kirk and Spock come along. And I'm not sure. I will, yes, pay the $5.99 a month to see this because I at least need to see a little bit of it. And I'm curious, and I'm a Star Trek fan, so I need to see it, but I'm not entirely convinced. And then there was this one alien at the end, and if somebody is more of a Trek expert than me, feel free to chime in. You can leave a comment on my blog or send me an email, whatever, and let me know. But there's this alien who says something along the lines of, my race has been bred to sense death. And I sense death. And all I could think of was, oh my gosh, we have our new Deanna Troi who, someone's pointing their weapons at the Enterprise and she says, I sense anger, Captain. It's this brilliant deduction that anybody without a single empathic impulse in their body couldn't figure out on their own. So that guy made me a little bit nervous, and the dark tone of it made me a little bit nervous, although it does look very Star Trek. It even has it made me think of the movies. There's gratuitous use of lens flares. It's is that a new hallmark of Star Trek? If you don't have that, you can't be a Trek series. So it looks interesting, but I'm not sure on this one. And I'm wondering, for those of you who are big fans of the franchise, what do you think? Go check it out. Like I said, you can see it on my blog, head to Total Fangirl. You can watch the video and see what you think of the trailer. And tell me if you're, willing to pay to see this. Because I'm really curious. I mean, Trek is big. Would you be willing to pay to see it? And do you think it's going to work? Or do you think it's going to be sort of a not very exciting Star Trek? So let me know.
Hey, welcome back. And longtime listeners will know that I was a huge fan of the Walking Dead All-Out War game by Mantic when they kickstarted it last year. I went all in on the Kickstarter, got really excited. And when it came in, I initially was like, oh, another game that I kickstarted that I forgot about. And it took a little while. It was a slow burn. And now I'm back. And Russ, I've gotten Russ into it now, too. Russ is loving it. And so we are going to do a full review now of Mantic's The Walking Dead All-Out War game.
Yeah, baby. This is wow, I can't wait to talk about this because there's a lot of fun stuff happening here and a lot of innovative mechanics going on in this game.
It's one of those simple but elegant and deep rule sets, I think.
And Andrzej, I think you're going to like this because it's definitely a miniature game, but it kind of feels like a board game, and it's very, very elegant and smooth. And if you like those two things together, I think you might find this interesting. So here we go. So quick overview. It came out, as Craig said, kickstarted in 2016, but it's officially released. You can find it in stores now. It's at our friend and local gaming store, for example.
It's everywhere.
By Mantic Games. So you should be able to find it at your local gaming store. They can get it for you.
They're making a huge push in comic book stores also. Yes. You'll find they've made a large cardboard display stand that can go into stores that are not designed for miniatures games because they're intending for this to be a big comic book seller as well.
Yep. And the Kickstarter edition, you can actually still get it on places like Amazon for around $85. I saw it there just now. Yeah,
that would be a no-brainer.
So we'll talk about what's in that thing. We're going to have Craig share what's in the Kickstarter box. But then also I'll tell you what's in the core set, which is like the way to buy it now if you haven't bought that. Right. So if you buy the core set, it's $40, but you do get a lot less. Like the Kickstarter box is just stupid amounts of plastic. I mean, it's, Kickstarter. The core set is still a good deal for $40, and we'll talk about what's in there too. But if you see one of those Kickstarter editions running around, and this game sounds like the kind of game you'd like, snap it up. It is a 1 to 2 player miniature skirmish game, meaning that it is just the scenarios are designed to either be played by solo or 2 players. You could probably play more than 2 players if you decided to do teams or something. But it's really it's like many miniature games. It's really a 2-player game. But the fact that it's got a solo component is a little unusual. So that's pretty slick. So Craig, what is in, first of all, what does it sound like when you open up a Walking Dead box?
Well, that's easy. It sounds like this. Got another one.
All right, so Carl. So what is it, Craig? Now, I have the list here for us to go through what's in the core set, but what's inside that Kickstarter box? Because that Kickstarter box,
I gotta tell you, Russ,
you open that, it looks like a board game in there. It's got vacuum formed plastic that holds everything. You're taking it all out. You're oohing and on at all the models in there. What exactly is in that bad boy?
Like, I gotta tell you, Mantic has been doing this for almost as long as Simon.
Mm-hmm.
And they've really kind of perfected this now, and I think they I think they really put in their A game because they're working with a license, obviously.
Right.
And so the way they do it is they'll start with like a basic pledge level, and then eventually they usually go, oh, you know what? We'll let you have this this all in pledge level, which kicks up everything even more. And then they're like, oh, well, we've also got these other things. But what they do, which is really retailer friendly, is one, they have retailer pledge levels, so retailers can, like the Amazon ones, can get the Kickstarter levels. But they also do this where they everything comes out in waves, and they hold some stuff back. So in every wave that comes out, even if you went all in on the Kickstarter, there's still stuff to buy. So, for instance, Rick on horseback is a model you can get, but he wasn't in the Kickstarter. So he was available at launch. So people who were in the Kickstarter are still buying stuff. So it's a really interesting thing. But The Something to Fear pledge, which was the kind of like the basic pledge, $125, got the basic core games, the basic core components, which Russ will go over in a second. Then in addition to that, you got the first expansion, the Atlanta expansion, which came with 4 more humans and a couple more walkers and another mat and more character cards and more equipment cards and more event cards and more tokens and more supply cards. And then you also got a bunch of what are in boosters now, but you get them. You get Shane and Reggie and Lori and Andrea and Amy and Walker boosters and Michonne, and you got Ronnie Renton that you met in just last episode. You actually get Ronnie as a zombie. Carolyn, Sophia, you get Craig, sounds like a great guy. Abraham, you get Walker Shane, you got more things. You got a bag of guns, which is a Kickstarter exclusive. You get more zombies. You got more equipment cards, more event cards, more equipment cards. You got all the plastic scenery, which is awesome. That's 2 wrecked cars, 2 wrecked trucks, 6 plastic 3-dimensional barricades, 10 supply markers, which is what you're fighting over in most of the missions. Then you got the Green Farm expansion, which is even more guys. You got 1, 2, 3, 4 humans. You got 1, 2 zombies. You got another mat. You got more character cards. You got more equipment cards. I mean, it's just ridiculously insane. Then you got Glenn and Tyrese and Maggie and Julie and Chris and Arnold Green and Lacey Green and another big giant walker, the gross walker. More equipment cards, more walkers that are characters that I won't name because they're spoilers. Basically, you just got a whole crap ton of models. And as Russ said, the Wave 1, which is most of this stuff, actually came all in one big box, which is the same size as the new large box that Fantasy Flight is going for, that square footprint box that's kind of like double high. Mm-hmm. And everything has its place. You got double the dice. You got a really cool dice bag. Everything in the regular standard box, but kicked up a notch. Plus all of these ridiculous models.
Right. Exactly. There's a lot of stuff in there.
Sounds like a ton of stuff.
It is.
Yeah. Why, if you could really find it for $84, I don't know why you wouldn't get that.
Yes, go buy it. My favorite thing that's in there is that in the core set, you get cardboard tokens that are shaped like wrecked cars. But in the Kickstarter set, you get actual plastic wrecked cars that are all beat up, which is just my favorite part.
And we should say, those are in an expansion you can buy at retail.
You can buy all this stuff. It's just now a lot more expensive because it's all not overly pricey. It's not the deal it is on the Kickstarter. So in the core set, which is only so the way you're probably going to get this today, unless you run out and find an $84 Kickstarter box, you're going to get it for the $40 core set. Now the $40 core set comes with everything 2 players need to play, but you're going to be tempted because there's all kinds of already out there expansions and little add-ons, like any miniature game. You can buy the RV, you can buy more survivors, you can buy more all that stuff. So, but in the core set, you get the gaming mat, so you can throw it down to have a surface to play on. You get Rick
paper,
yes. You get Rick, Carl, Derek, Patrick, Liam, and Sandra as the survivors. You get 12 Walker miniatures, so a good pile of zombies. You get the rule book, which I have to rave about the rule book. The rule book is awesome. First of all, it's done up like a comic book, so it's very colorful, great art, lots of comic panels in there. Very well written, but the quick reference on the back functions as a quick reference that actually is an honest-to-goodness, real quick reference that you can play 90% of the game just from that. Better yet, it has page numbers next to every rule, so you can easily find the main ruling. So it functions as a quick reference and an index. And one flip in, all the keywords are in the book. So really well designed, very easy to play. That more about how the gameplay works in a bit. You get a quick start guide, so you can jump right in and start playing that way. You do get the RV in the core set, and then you're going to get card RV.
The flat
everything's
2D
card. Everything's card disc. You get the RV cars, some barricades, supply counters, lots of other cardboard, lots of cards, and we'll talk about how the game works in here as well. But basically, and then you get a bunch of those custom dice.
It's good quality card, too.
It is. Actually, the card stock's really nice. And they have a bunch of these custom 6-sided dice that Craig mentioned for different things in the game. We'll talk about those a little later, too. So I think what's in the $40 set looks pretty solid to me. The $84 Kickstarter set is ridiculous. I mean, it's just don't even think about it.
I'm not finding that on
I did
on Amazon, but maybe it's there.
I'll send you the link. But in any case,
I already got it. I don't need it. I'm just curious.
I'll put it. Well, if I put a link up, it'll be gone.
There you go.
But in any case, so I think it's a good deal. Andrzej, how does it sound to you? How does the core set sound for $40? What do you think?
It sounds great. I mean, it's really a ton of stuff. I should get to know more about the rule set.
Okay. Well, let's go check it out. So let's talk a bit about setup. So, like, setup here is any place you've played a miniature war game before. Nothing here is going to surprise you. The first thing you want to do is actually pick your scenario, because the scenarios dictate who you can play. Now, in the core rulebook, there's only one scenario. However, in the expansion, which is included in the Kickstarter version, but you can also get it, it has a whole little comic book in there of a campaign mode, which is a bunch of cool story-driven narrative events, some of which have pre-described teams for both players, some of which give you some different armies. So you got to pick your scenario first, basically. So you pick that. Then you're going to build your force, and like any miniature game, there's a point system. The point system allows you to pick which survivors are going to be in your group, and also what equipment you want to give those survivors. So you can choose to have Rick with or without a gun. You can choose to.
Wait, I gotta correct you though.
Yeah, what?
Because I found it on Amazon.
Yeah,
it's actually just the normal $40 starter.
Yeah,
with a small Kickstarter expansion bundle that includes just a few models and cards and a couple counters.
Oh,
so you don't get all that other cool stuff.
I definitely saw it earlier. It showed but anyway, maybe they were lying. But anyway,
the Walking Dead All Out War bundle core set with Kickstarter exclusive expansion.
Oh, okay. So
I mean, it's quite possible that there's another thing, but this is $84.
But by the time you hear this, it's probably gone, because it doesn't matter.
It's probably gone anyway, because it says only three left in stock.
Right. So but basically, what's really cool is you build your force. You're going to take cards for each character, which is the point right on them there. You're going to take cards for any gear you want to give your characters. And then, of course, also you're going to take the models that are associated with them as well for your side. And then for setup, all you do is go ahead and there's actually a kind of a neat pregame starts to happen. So there are rules for deploying terrain. So you can either, do your own aesthetically pleasing terrain and then play, but also there's a rule system in there for deploying terrain if you want more of a tournament sort of feel. You're going to be playing probably most of the time on a 2x2 space, but you can, the game scales out for as big a table as you kind of want to be on. And then you're going to do supply counters. So in the basic mission, the one that's in the book, it's essentially a supply grab. So each player in this game is not a game where one side plays the walkers and the other side plays the survivors. In this side, both of us are playing survivors. And in the main scenario in the book, we're both trying to get some supplies from an area where zombies are milling about. And what's interesting about the game is you're fighting each other for the supplies, and the zombies are there, controlled by game mechanics. But what's interesting about this is there are many ways you can lure the zombies to cause more problems for your opponent while you try to maximize getting the goods. So you're going to go ahead and put these supply tokens out there. There's rules for all of that to get that down. And then last but not least, you're going to go ahead and put the walkers out there, and they start off with one walker in base-to-base with every supply token. But again, these things scale, or the walker count scales with the point value. So if you pick more points, you get more walkers on the table. Then
can I ask you something?
Sure, yeah.
So you are playing survivors, both of you. But are there any co-op scenarios in the expansions, or is it always opposed?
There are co-op expansion. Craig, you know this better than I do. There's solo play.
Well, there's whole expansions where it's a campaign
and it's co-op.
And the campaign, the actual original campaign that comes with the Kickstarter version, Wave 1, is the first volume or two of the comic books, or you could consider probably the first season of the TV show, and it's all co-op. Versus so you're trying to do certain things like get into Atlanta and get supplies, or there's some conflict towards the end amongst the survivors, but for the most part it's the survivors against the walkers. So there is that, and because of that gives you a very easy template for making up other missions that could conceivably be either solo play or co-op.
That really sounds cool. And I mean, it can be much easier for people that are not into miniature games to get into this. I mean, from what I've seen, these people tend to prefer co-ops from opposed play, so that's a great way to do demo stuff.
That's a good point. And we should also say we skipped this part, but all the miniatures in the game are pre-assembled. So you can approach this very much like a board game in that there's nothing to assemble, there's nothing to paint. The only thing that's a little unusual is, there's no squares on the board. You're playing on a table and you're measuring movement, but the game also comes with a measuring, a cardboard measuring stick. So it does pass sort of the Christmas morning test. Everything you need to play is in the box.
Yeah. Matt Hart would be pleased.
Yes. So that's pretty much set up. The last thing to do in setup is you got to shuffle 2 decks that are really important to the game. There's one deck that is the event deck, which is going to cause more strange and crazy things to happen each round. And the other deck is the supply deck, which needs to be shuffled because when you go find those supply counters, those tokens, and pick them up, you're going to be able to draw from the supply deck and maybe find some cool stuff. So those are the 2 decks that are ready on the side of the board. The last thing you want to do for setup is there's also the giant threat dial. And so the giant threat dial is a big disc that has the numbers 1 through 16, I think, Craig, on it, and a radial pattern on the disc, I think.
It's
I think it's 1 through 16, some number. And this die represents how bad the zombie situation is getting, and events throughout the game will increase it. And if it gets to the highest number, the game will end. But also, as the dial progresses, it moves to different sort of alert levels, I guess they called. And there's low, medium, high, and that will also indicate whether or not some of your survivors are starting to get nervous and panic. So there's this time pressure in the game as well, which basically says as things get harder, you're going to have, the game's going to end on you, A, but B, some of your survivors will become less and less reliable as the stress of more and more zombie panic happening makes things worse, right? So that's also a big part of the game. So that's setup. Any questions about that, Andrzej? Making sense?
No, as far as I can tell, everything's clear right now.
Cool. All right, good. So how do you play? So we're all set up. The last thing you do is alternating deployment. So, Andrzej puts a guy down, I put a guy down, we go back and forth. And we should stress, this is a very small model count game. So Craig and I played last night at 100 points with 2 per people each. You might double that to 200 points or a little bit more. We could have gotten a few more guys in there, but 2 to 5 guys is probably going to be, as big as it gets, right? You're not going to have.
And we should say that we each had a relatively expensive character.
Right.
Actually, I had 2 middling characters, and you had a ridiculously expensive character.
Yes,
he had Michonne with her katana.
Michonne with the katana, baby. She's awesome. So the cool part is, you got nice list building in there, but I really have a hard time seeing anybody with more than like 4 or 5 guys in there. It would be, I don't know how you could try it, but, so anyway, so how to play. Well, the first thing we want to think about when we learn any new game, right, is how do you win? So the way you win this game for the main scenario in the rule book, but again, every scenario's got its own rules, but if you don't have any expansions, you only have one scenario to play, and it's the supply grab scenario. And the way you win is there are 9 of these supply tokens on the board, and you got to have 7 of them in your possession to win. So if you ever get 7 of them, you win the game. But the thing to watch out for is that threat dial. If that threat dial ever gets to the end, there's no turn limit in the game, but if the threat dial ever gets to the end, the game ends immediately, and whoever has the most supply tokens is the winner. So, and that threat dial will move pretty much every turn, oftentimes more than once a turn. So that threat dial is real, and that timer is real, and it'll start moving pretty quick. I was worried that it was going to be one of those games with no time limit, just sort of implied, but nope, it moves pretty quick. So that's what you're trying to do. And pretty much there's an action phase that you just repeat, and it's an interactive turn. So one player is going to have initiative, and you're going to roll some dice to figure out who's the first player of the initiative. There's a giant initiative token, in the Kickstarter edition, it's Rick's badge, which is pretty cool. It's a giant plastic badge thing. You put that in front of the player who's got initiative, and then you go ahead, and that player is going to pick one of his survivors, and he's going to fully activate his survivor, and then the other player is going to fully activate one of their survivors, and we'll go back and forth till all of our survivors have activated. Making sense, Andrzej?
Yeah, sure.
Cool. So when you activate, you only get 2 actions, but the thing to remember is you can't do the same action more than once. So you can move, you can search, you can stand up, you can swap an item, you can do a special action, which might be one of your pieces of equipment you're carrying, you can shoot, you can hide, you can hold your nerve, you can make some noise. But that's basically all the crazy actions you can do. But you can't do the same one twice. You can't move, or shoot, right? I'm going to pick a couple of these. That's pretty much it. So I'm going to do my action with my guy, my 2 actions. Then Craig's going to do his 2 actions. Go back and forth till they're all done. And then we go on to the 3 other phases of the game, which are pretty much the end phase stuff. And then you repeat. So pretty simple. Now, you may have noticed when I was listing all the actions in there, one of the interesting things about this game, one of the innovative mechanics, I would say, is that there is not an action for melee. Okay?
Right.
You can't actually spend an action to swing your sword. Melee is a separate phase that happens at the end of the round. So if you end up getting locked into melee during your actions, you don't fight to the end of the turn, and that'll happen sort of simultaneously. So you got to decide. You just watch that. That takes you a little getting used to because as a miniature gamer, you don't really expect that to work that way, and it does. But it's really great. It makes the game work really, really well, and it's one of the ways these game-controlled zombies really kind of fit into the whole pattern, right? So the kinds of actions you can do, you can move. When you're moving, you got 2 choices. You can sneak, right? Which for pretty much everybody in the game is 4 inches, but there might be some people with special rules, but that's the basic. There's not like a movement stat on the cards. It's just you move 4 inches. Or you can run, which you can double for 8. But the problem with running is you make noise, which attracts zombies. So if you sneak, no zombies do anything when you sneak. So you can move 4 inches. Doesn't matter how close you are to a zombie. Doesn't matter. Any of that matters. You just move 4 inches. If you run, you move up to 8 inches. But then at the end of your movement, you got to take your measuring thing out and look. And if there's any zombies within 10, the closest zombie moves towards you, right? And there are some interesting zombie movement rules. So how fast are zombies, Craig? I think there's 6, right?
They move. They always move in what's called a shamble, which is 6 inches.
Right. So they move 6. They always move in a straight line. And if they hit something, so let's say they're on the other side of a car, and you move, you run 8 inches, but they're within 10 of you. There's the car in the way. They move towards you in a straight line. If they hit the car, they stop at the car. But if they were going to move and they began their contact with the car, they will then slide around the car. And so if going around the perimeter of the car is less than 6 inches, they could get to you that way, right? Did I get that right, Craig?
Yep, absolutely.
Cool. Does that make sense, Andrzej?
Yeah, just one question. I mean, is there anything like the noise tracking in Zombicide, or do you resolve the actions of zombies that are attracted just after you make the noise?
You resolve it instantly. So the kind of, and there's really 2 kinds of noises in the game. We'll get to another one in a minute. There's a mayhem, which is a very loud noise, like a gun shooting, which causes all zombies within 10 inches to move. Or there's just a small noise like running, which causes the nearest zombie to move 6 inches, right? So there's basically those 2 kinds of things. But what's neat about this is this allows you to do some pretty cool stuff, like because zombies always move in a straight line, and the zombie that moves is the closest one to the person who, after they end their movement, you can do some pretty strategic stuff to move zombies into contact with things. What's interesting about this game is if there's a supply token that a zombie is touching, you can't pick it up. You got to kill the zombie first. So what you can kind of do is run around, lure the zombies to touch the supply tokens that are kind of near your opponent and kind of lock or get them to. The other thing that happens if a zombie's touching you, you can't activate anymore that turn. You got to wait until the melee phase, which is the end of the round. So if I can lure a zombie, so let's say, Andrzej, one of your survivors is between me and a zombie. I can run up next to your survivor, and the zombie will move towards me, but let's say he touches your survivor first. Now he's locked in battle with your survivor, and if your survivor hasn't activated yet, he's not going to be able to activate because he can't do anything now because he's in hand-to-hand combat, and hand-to-hand combat doesn't end to the end of the round. So you can already start to use these zombies to lock out your opponent and do some nasty stuff. And so you got to really be thinking about, where are the zombies relative to me, and am I giving my opponent a cool move by getting this close to a zombie or in this situation? So
sounds great.
It's pretty neat, yeah. So that's movement. Searching is simple. It's a simple action. If you're touching one of those search tokens, you can go ahead and say, I'm going to search, and you get to keep the token. The token goes to your character, so now who's carrying it? That's one of the victory conditions, right? And then you also get to draw from the items deck, and you might find something cool. Most of the items are there's things like bandages in there. There's extra ammo. There's different weapons. There's also the chance to draw a zombie, so there could be a zombie hiding in the thing, and he attacks you. But that's pretty much searching. You can stand up if you're knocked down. That's an action. Swapping an item is just basically giving gear to someone else in your crew that's near you. They have this thing called, I think it's called the threat radius, right, Craig? And it's a giant template. and it allows you to put it over any model, and you can see this sort of mechanic they call the threat radius.
Kill zone.
Thank you.
It's the kill zone.
And the kill zone is used for several different mechanics in the game. One of them is swapping items. So if you can put the kill zone over your guy, and anybody in the kill zone you can swap items with. You might have an item that gives you a special action, like a bow can fire an arrow, and that would be a thing you could do. You can shoot. So shooting is basically an attack. It's actually very simple. We'll go over combat mechanics right here because it's super simple. So when you go ahead to shoot, what you do is you declare a target. There's basic line of sight rules in the game that won't surprise any miniature gamer. So I'm going to say I'm going to shoot that guy over there. I got line of sight. Weapons have ranges on the cards, so you know how many inches that is away, so you measure your inches. You're allowed to pre-measure in this game, by the way, so there's no surprises about that. So Craig says, yeah, I'm going to shoot Andrzej. I'm going to shoot your guy there. You look at the card. The card's going to show a number of colored dice on it, and plus your character has got stats on it, but the stats are all like shoot, melee, and defense, and it's just numbers of colored dice under them. So you're going to add the number of colored dice on your character sheet under the shoot stat to the number of colored dice on the weapon you're using, and that's the dice pool you're going to be able to roll to try to hurt somebody when you shoot them. Meanwhile, the guy that's getting shot, whether it's a zombie or one of Andrzej's dudes, Andrzej's going to look at the defense characteristic of that character and roll that many defense dice. So we're all going to roll these dice. These dice are, they're all custom, but basically different sides of different numbers of sort of looking bullet holes in them. And the side that gets the most bullet holes counted up is the winner. And the difference will be how much damage the defender takes from the shot, right? So there's some cool little modifiers in there, like if there's intervening terrain, like some cover between you and the target gets an additional white die of defense, things like that. But it's really pretty simple. A couple of the nuances, some of the dice have exclamation points on them. If the attacker rolls an exclamation point, it's considered a headshot. So if there's a zombie involved, right, so you're shooting a zombie and the shooter's number of bullet holes exceed the defending zombie's roll, the zombie's going to be knocked down, but not dead, unless the shooter also happened to roll an exclamation point, which means you got a nice headshot and it killed the zombie and you take him off the table. Right?
Okay.
So that's pretty simple. But so it's hard to kill zombies because there's basically only one side on all the dice that have an exclamation point. So it's kind of hard to kill zombies, but you definitely can knock them down a lot, which is great because knockdown zombies don't react to noise, don't fight you. They're just there, but they're not really a threat at the moment. But you never know when they're going to stand up. That's the problem with them. If you shoot a hero, another survivor, like so Andrzej, if Craig shot one of your guys, the exclamation point just means bonus damage. Do 1 more point of damage. Making sense?
Yeah. Actually, just one question. Is there any additional incentive for fighting with other survivors? I mean, in games with supply tokens and such, like in Frostgrave or in Shadow War, sometimes you end up with a game where you just get onto the board, try to get the tokens and run without even engaging into a fight. How does it look like here?
Well, what we've seen so far, there's always, and Craig, you can answer this question too, there's 9 tokens on the board. Yeah. And there are some rules about how the tokens have to be deployed. So they can't be in anybody's deployment zone, and they can't be within 2 inches of each other. And you need 7 to win. So it's actually based on how the deployment works. Usually, it's hard to deploy them in such a way that there's not some near both sides deployment zones,
right. And you don't know where you're going to start the game when you're putting them down.
And it's alternating deployment of these things. So there's always a couple near my zone and a couple near Craig's zone. And since there's 9 of them and you need 7 to win, one side always gets 3, right off the bat. Yeah. So It's pretty hard. You're going to have to do some player interaction. You can't just ignore the players. You got to basically have to take one off of somebody at some point.
That's neat.
So basically, yeah, you don't get away from that. But then what ends up happening is, like, the other thing that happens is when you pick these things up, they don't go off the table in some kind of victory point pool. They're being carried by the character, right? So I've only got 2 characters, right, in my particular warband. So I've got, one guy's running around the table carrying 4, the other guy's carrying 2. Well, now all of a sudden, the guy carrying 4, if Craig can kill that guy and pick them all up, he wins, right? So all of a sudden, that guy becomes a big, fat, juicy target. And if he kills that guy, I just lost half my victory points, right? Yep. So it's all of a sudden, the more of those you're carrying around, it's not like a sure thing. You've just created a giant, fat target of awesome, right? So it drives player interaction very nicely, which is really nice to see. All right, so that's all the actions, and that's shooting. So pretty straightforward, right? That's the primary part of the game, but these other phases are equally exciting, which is pretty neat. So then there's the event phase.
To me, this is what makes it the whole zombie thing come alive. Yeah. No pun intended.
So in the event phase, the zombies do their thing. So remember that threat zone disc we talked about? So you're going to go around the table and look at each zombie and hold that threat zone disc over them. It sounds complicated, but actually you can eyeball it usually anyway. And you basically, any walker that has a survivor within his threat zone, he immediately moves for free into base-to-base contact with that guy. So what ends up happening is, right now, all the walkers that got anywhere near a survivor, just engage them, right? Unless they're knocked down. Then, now they haven't fought yet, they're just in your face now, right? Then what happens is you draw an event card and resolve it. So now we're going to draw an event card. These event cards usually say things like, increase the threat level by some number. And then they say, oftentimes, the event changes depending on what the current threat level is. So if it's low, then the event's a minor thing. If it's medium, the event gets worse. And if it's high, the event's super bad. And these events can range anything from add more zombies to the table, coming in from random board edges. But what's neat about when they do this is players alternate controlling where these zombies come in. So while the table edge they're coming in on is fixed, Craig might choose to put one in a spot, and I might choose to put one in a spot. And now as the game's evolving, we're deploying these guys tactically to mess up our opponent, right? Which is pretty interesting. Craig, what are some examples of some other events? I'm trying to think of some.
This is where, in your normal activation phase, you can sort of manipulate the zombies with running and gunshots and making noise so that they, move one or you move several. This is where a random number are going to be moved. They are chosen by the players. So you might sneak around a zombie and think you're going to be okay. And then in the event phase, you might get one that says each player rolls a blue die and moves that many zombies 6 inches. Right. And all of a sudden, your guy who you thought was totally safe is mobbed. Or you could get the restless dead, which is everybody all of the prone walkers all of a sudden stand up, which is usually only a 50-50 shot at the end of every turn that they stand up.
Right.
One of my favorites is the herd, where the player with initiative gets to move one walker, and then every walker on the board within a certain range of that walker all moves towards that walker.
Right.
So one walker starts moving and moaning, and everybody else starts converging on that walker. So this is really where the threat, this is where it comes in. But this is where the zombies all of a sudden take on their own sort of animus.
Right.
And the whole thing really, really starts to get edgy.
But there's a couple things about this I really like. One, as Craig said, you never know what's going to happen, so nothing's certain. But the second part is the zombies are particularly evil because oftentimes it indicates both players get to choose where the zombies go. So it's not like sometimes it's just move towards the closest survivor, but oftentimes it's you get to move those guys. And the other thing that's nice is the language. They have a lot of great keywords in the game, and one of the keywords they have is eligible zombies. So zombies that are knocked down don't move. And zombies that are already engaged in combat don't move. So you can't move a zombie out of combat and save your dude. But you can move extra zombies into combat. And someone thought they had it locked, now has 4 zombies on them instead of 2. Or if you were fighting zombies last round and managed to knock one down, now you stand it up again. I'm back to fighting 2 again. And as I mentioned, you have to roll those exclamation points to kill zombies. So it's not that easy to kill those guys.
Michonne was knocking them down left and right, but could not kill one to save her life.
Couldn't kill them with her katana. She's having a hard time there. So that's the event phase. But we're not over yet. So now all the zombies have moved. Some crazy events have happened. Now it's the melee phase. So first of all, if anybody is in melee right now, if anybody's base to base with a zombie, or no, it's actually not, it's just any melee at all, the threat level goes up by 1. So just the noise of combat, threat goes up. So as you've already noticed, threat could have gone up twice this turn. Once, well, actually, mayhem
or
also.
More than that.
Mayhem causes threat also. Forgot to mention that. So when I said when you run, you make noise, but when you shoot a gun, you create mayhem. Mayhem not only makes all zombies within 10 move towards you, but it also makes threat goes up 1. So if someone fired a gun, threat went up. If the event card had threat on it, it went up. That can be a 2 even sometimes. Or if melee's happening, the threat goes up as well. So threat could go up 3 in a turn or more in some cases, but often it's 1 or 2 times. Then the melee phase happens, so we check our threat. Then you're going to do what's called splitting combat. So the way this works is you can't have 3 different factions in combat at once. So what I mean by that is, if Craig has got a character fighting 4 zombies, that's really only 2 sides. There's Craig's side and there's the zombie side. That's fine. You can do all that at once. Yeah. But if I'm in a combat with some zombies that are also touching one of Craig's guys, now there's 3 different factions involved. There's Craig's side, there's my side, and there's the zombie side. But so you have to divide that up into 2 different combats in some order. So if I'm touching 2 and Craig's touching 1, you can slice them. There's some rules for that, but it doesn't happen that often, honestly. It's not a big deal, but you got to do that when it does happen. Then the player with initiative order chooses which battles happen in which order, which can be important in certain cases. Sometimes it doesn't matter, but it does matter sometimes when you're splitting these combats up. And it also matters with certain characters' bonus abilities, because some of them, if they win a combat, they can fight again, things like that. And so the order those happen kind of matters. But the initiative player chooses what's going to happen, and they're going to resolve each combat. Now, melee combat's pretty simple. It's very much like shooting, except you're adding up the dice involved in melee instead of the dice for your shooting stats. So basically, each survivor and or zombie has a stat that says melee with a number of dice and colors on there. So you're going to grab that pool. Plus, if you're carrying any weapons, could be a katana, could be a tire iron, could be some other kind of baseball bat, that might add some more dice to your pool, or it might give you an ability like re-rolling and things like that. And you're going to roll your dice. Now, the defender you can choose to defend or attack, right, Craig?
Yes.
So I'm a little fuzzy on why you ever choose defense, but in any case, well, go ahead.
Because many models, the
defense is better.
Many models' defense is better.
Yeah. That's what it is. So if you choose attack, then you roll your melee pool against their melee pool. But the good news about that is if you win, you do damage to them. If your defense stat is better, you would choose to defend, and there you get to use your defense dice, which is good if your defense is better. But if you win, you don't do any damage. You just don't get hurt, right? That's what it is. I forgot about that. So you pick that. If you're both wielding swords, you're probably both attacking. Or if you're fighting zombies, you're both attacking. Well, not always, because anyway, you choose. Yeah. Then you roll your dice, and you add up your totals on both sides, and whoever's got the most pips is going to win. Interesting thing about zombies, though, so both sides add up their dice pools together in total, right? So if I've got 2 heroes in there, and there's 4 zombies, you're just rolling one big dice pool. But zombies have a thing where most zombies only throw 1 die, but if there's an extra zombie, it gets exponentially more dice. So instead of just 2 zombies isn't 2 dice, 2 zombies is 3 dice, right? So it adds 2 extra die for every extra zombie. So you kind of all of a sudden, the zombie pool gets really nasty if you're swarmed. So you roll this, and then whatever the difference is, the winner does that much damage to the loser, right? And again, if you're fighting a zombie, you're just going to knock him down no matter how much damage you do, unless you got an exclamation point, in which case you kill him because you got the headshot. Making sense, Andrzej?
Yeah.
Super simple combat. It's really simple. That's it. So it's very fast, which I like about it. So you're having these combats, boom, boom, boom. They're done. And that's it. Now we're in the end phase. So remember, event phase happened where zombies move if they could to anybody that's too close to them. We drew an event card. We resolved that. We looked for melee combat. We resolved that. Now it's the end phase. In the end phase, you roll for every prone walker to stand up, and there's a special black die that you roll for that. And they stand up. You also roll for bitten figures. So if any time one of your heroes took a wound from a zombie, there's a chance that the bite gets worse. Right, Craig? So you got to roll for that.
Now, if they get attacked by a zombie and you get the little exclamation point, they are now bitten.
That's what it is. Yep.
And now for the rest of the game, in the end phase, you have to test. And if that comes up blank, that black die is 50-50. There's 3 blank sides and there's 3 sheriff's badges. And if it comes up blank, you lose an additional health point.
Ow. Right. So this is the sort of the cleanup phase. Then you resolve any end of turn events that are happening. And then you check for victory conditions. So does anybody have 7 tokens? Oh, you win. And then you pass the initiative token to the other player and rinse and repeat. Now we're back to repeating again. Right. So it's action phase, event phase, melee phase, end phase. That's it. So the weird thing about the game is that this melee phase is out of action, but actually makes it work really, really well with how the zombies all work. So that's the core parts of the game. What do you think, Andrzej, in terms of the basic mechanics? Does it make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, the only question I have right now is that there are 2 players, and then there's the third zombie side, like you said, the zombie faction. I mean, how challenging are the walkers? How does the lack of melee action work into that? I mean, are they merely an annoyance, or Are they a serious threat during the game?
Craig, you want to answer that? You fought him.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much like in the comic, one walker isn't going to pose that much of a threat to a battle-hardened survivor. It's when all of a sudden you get the wrong event card come up, and the 5 guys that you've been weaving through all focus on you, and all of a sudden you get mobbed because you've got that the force multiplier of fighting multiple zombies. Every zombie after the first is adding not only its own die, but an additional die for every zombie after the first. So, like, if you've got 5 zombies, you're maxing out your dice at some crazy number, and they're just going to drag you down in one turn of combat. So it's all about that tense level of, like when we had Ronnie on, and he said they were basically walking terrain pieces. That's what they are until they're not. You know, they are a tool to be used. They are an obstacle to be avoided. They are an unlucky, or maybe the price of doing business. And then all of a sudden, with 1 or 2 bad event cards, they are between you and survival. So it's very much like the comic and the TV show. You might have a game where they don't really factor in that much, but you're constantly worrying about them. And then in the next game, the first couple of event cards create a wall of zombies between you and where you have to be next. So it's going to be that part of the game is going to be a little random, but it's random in a way that completely folds in with the narrative that's being told in this wider story that already exists.
It really sounds like there's a lot of tactical options open up by the zombie faction. Yeah, it really sounds great.
It's pretty neat. I like that a lot.
The tactics and the strategies that you have available to you with the zombies are just one of the many aspects of the game that I think are really great. Yeah.
Yeah. One other thing we should add before we get to final thoughts on this is the some of the additional rules you get from the expansions really add a lot. I think my favorite one is the burning and fire rule. So in the core game, there's none of that, but in the expansion, it adds event cards that can cause fires to break out throughout the table.
We should say this is the Days Gone By expansion.
Yes, thank you. And there's also weapons,
which is available
gear,
now.
Yeah, weapons and gear that you also can use to cause the zombies to catch on fire, which is particularly nasty to your question, Andrzej, earlier, because it makes the zombies nastier. Because if a flaming zombie gets near you, basically he starts doing a point of damage just every turn he's next to you, regardless of whether he actually beats you in combat or not. So all of a sudden, these zombies really hurt. And we should say, most heroes have 4 or 5 wounds before they're dead. So there's not a lot there. So if you lose a combat, these dice can swing on you, and you can lose one swing of a melee attack, and all of a sudden you lose 3 points. You only got 2 left, and you're dead. And someone gets near you with fire, and all of a sudden your hero's out.
And we should say, for people who aren't necessarily fans of the comics and the show, in this universe, everybody's got the zombie virus or whatever it is that causes you to be a zombie. It's already inside you. We're all infected environmentally. So when you die, whether or not you died from a zombie bite, you will be coming back as a zombie.
Right. So that's basically it. So I think, Craig, we need to give our final thoughts here. But before we do that, Craig, in the style of a man who just caught his son wearing his favorite hat for the 5th time.
A 5th time.
Please describe the patent-pending D6G rating system.
Okay. Carl! What did I tell you about my hat, Carl? That hat means something, Carl. It means a lot. It means, everything means something, Carl, and I'm going to tell you, everything in the world has a scale, Carl. It all has a scale. Where does it fit, and how important is it? And I'm going to tell you what my scale is, Carl. I'm going to say it's like rolling a die, because rolling a die, life in this world, this fallen world, is like rolling a die. And the higher you get, the better the roll, but everything's got a variability to it, and so everything has a rating, and the lower the rating means the more likely you're going to roll that die, and it's going to be that number or above. So the lower the rating, the better it is, Carl. The higher the rating, the worse it is. That's what it comes down to, Carl.
Nicely done there. So, yes, so for those who are new to the show, basically it's the chance on a D6 roll that you will enjoy this game. And, of course, lower is better. So 2+ means you'll probably like it. So,
and because we're bad at math, we say a reroll for a half.
Yes.
So two and a half would be or 2 with a reroll is really good. That's like that would be the equivalent of a lot of stars if we were going with stars.
So helpful. So Craig, how would you rate Walking Dead?
Well, I'm always on the lookout and have been for a very long time for a really cool, engaging, immersive zombie game.
And who isn't?
And who isn't really? And this game did it for me during the Kickstarter when I was playtesting those rules. I was sucked in. The rules have been clarified a little bit. There's some wacky things here or there with some weapon ranges that I think are odd. But other than that, there's really not a false note in this game. I love the way the walkers work. I love the way the event cards change everything from one turn to the next. I love the constant sense of menace. And you get that from the comics and the TV show too, where sometimes you're just walking around and you're just gonna stick a walker in the eye with a pencil because what the heck, he's there and he's between you and what you need. And then other times you're gonna be like, oh, I'm totally safe, and all of a sudden walkers are just falling out of the woodwork. I really enjoy that. I think the combat system is very elegant and simple. It gives you some cool cinematics while at the same time it doesn't really bog down. You've got cover factored into shooting. You've got piling on factored into melee. You've got all of the different weapons options available to you with cards. And we should also say the game that we're playing has a couple things that are hidden inside it because it's the Kickstarter edition, meaning I have a lot more event cards and supply cards and equipment cards than you get in that original box. So we might have stuff that you're not going to see a lot of right out of the box unless you start picking up these expansions, like the Days Gone By expansion, which is available now, and then the Atlanta expansion, which adds every one of these expansions adds more cards of all these different types. So so that really kind of like makes the game, adds to the replayability, adds to the variety. Days Gone By also comes with all the rules you need to make custom survivors, so you can completely deviate from The Walking Dead. It has all of the different special rules because all the different characters have special rules. I had a character yesterday when we were playing. She could do 2 movement actions in 1 activation, but she couldn't do 2 runs in a row. So she could walk and run, sneak and run, or sneak and get 8 inches without activating any zombies. So and every one of those is available with a points value attached to it in the Days Gone By expansion that you can get, which is kind of like a solo play introductory expansion that adds to the basic box set. So I love the way character creation is very simple with the cards. The supply stuff is fun. All kinds of wacky stuff can happen. I triggered a booby trap last night. It was in a hot dog stand. Who knew?
Mm-hmm. Yes, right.
And because of the way that it works and the keywords that are involved in the booby trap, you might be able to move the booby trap explosion, which again, that kill zone template is used for so many different things, including template weapons, that I was able to bat the booby trap grenade into an oncoming zombie and kill the oncoming zombie. I didn't kill it, actually. I knocked it down. But so there's that. And then Russ's Molotov cocktail from last night was just ridiculous.
In an awesome
and that
way.
was ridiculously awesome. Yes. So I mean, it's great. It's fast. It's fun. It hits all the right notes for me. I would say as a miniatures game, straight up as a miniatures game, I'm going to say a 3+, and I would add 1 to that if you are a fan of zombies in general. I would add a reroll to that if you are a fan of The Walking Dead. So it's going to be 2+ with a reroll if you're a gamer who loves The Walking Dead, I think.
Nice. Well, I would agree with you pretty much right down the line there, Craig. I like it a lot. I love the mechanics. What you get in the box is crazy good. I love the referenceability of the rule book. I think it's very, very clean, and I think the way the melee works and the way the zombies, I think Ronnie described them as sort of like terrain that bites. It's a really nice adds to it, and it gives you some of those feelings there were some of those, like that Molotov character. There's those exciting moments, those stand-up moments that you do find in things like Zombicide, but this is more tactical even than that, which I really, really like. And I like the it's not a co-op. I mean, there is a co-op element. You can certainly play a co-op, which is great, but I love the two sides fighting and trying to get around the zombies, which happens quite a bit in the show and the comic book too. So I really enjoy it a lot. I'm with you. I think I'm just going to say it's a straight up 3+ for most miniature gamers who like skirmish games. There's a lot to like here. And I also like, we didn't really talk about this, it plays very fast. Like you're usually done an hour and a half tops. So it's one of those games where setting up the terrain might take you more time than actually playing the game. So play 2 or 3 games on there. You know, it's good stuff, and it plays nice and quick. My only critique is that there's only one scenario that I would qualify as sort of competitive play. Everything in the expansion seems to be, and maybe I haven't seen enough of these scenarios, I don't know, but everything in the expansion seems to be either co-op or very highly narrative-driven, which is and very asymmetric, which is fine, which I like those kind of missions. But I would love to see more than just one sort of, like they actually have tournament rules on the Mantic website. I'd love to see what the tournament scenario is. Are they all the one from the book? Because I would think they get pretty, you kind of would want a little bit of variety after a while, I would think.
Yeah.
So, Andrzej, what do you think about your desire to play this game? What do you think your D6% roll chance is to want to play this thing and try it out?
I think it would be 3+. It really sounds great. I mean, now I'm only wondering how I would justify buying yet another game
that is a problem.
in front of my fiance. Yeah, right. But I mean, the only thing that doesn't sound that great is the fact that there are, all these Kickstarter exclusives, and some of them are either unavailable or you have to buy them separately. That's the only thing that I think is not that great. But other than that, it sounds like a simple yet quite deep game. So I'm looking forward to it.
On that note, we should actually say that the Kickstarter exclusives, and this is pretty true of all Mantic Kickstarters at this point, they're not game impacting pieces. They're like little like you get, instead of the cardboard sheriff's badge, you get a plastic sheriff's badge. There are poses, but those poses will be released but other poses of the same model and the same character will be released as the waves are released. So it's not a situation where it's not like a CMON Kickstarter where you're never going to be able to get half of this stuff because it's never going to be available to normal humans. Other than the actual pose, everything game mechanic wise will be available to everybody as the expansions release.
Okay, that actually sounds much better.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, Andrzej, thank you so much for joining us on our show.
Yeah, especially so late at night
really
or early in the morning.
Thank you for having me.
Excellent. So, Andrzej, if people want to learn more about your company and your terrain, where should they go on the internet to find out more?
Well, the simplest way to get to know more would be to go to www.multiversegamingterrain.com or to our Facebook fan page. Just look up Multiverse Gaming on Facebook and it will take you straight there.
All kinds of cool stuff there.
Excellent. Well, Andrzej, thank you so much for joining us, and best of luck with Multiverse Gaming.
Thank you, guys. Really
Thanks,
glad to.
Andrzej. We're going to keep an eye on you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
This edition of Did You Ever Notice is brought to you by all of our fine friends over at Patreon. These are the patrons, the men, the women, the children that help us keep the lights on, the tape rolling, and each show coming one after the next, after the next, after the next, or reverse order, whichever. Anyway, thank you guys and gals for all of your help and your support down through the years. And today in particular, I'd like to thank Ross Watson and Ryan Warner, Sam E., Sam Johnson, and Scott Bercuda. Thank you, boys, and thank you all. Did you ever notice there seems to be a lot more clairvoyance around than your average run-of-the-mill observation of reality around you would seem to indicate. I mean, there seems to be an awful lot more people in possession of the absolute truth of anything in particular than you think there might actually be when you do a little self-analysis. As I've said a little bit on the show over the last couple episodes, of course, Warhammer 40,000, Games Workshop is coming out with the latest edition of their game. 8th edition is what it's going to be. And, of course, they just did the latest edition of their fantasy game, Warhammer Fantasy Battles, by destroying it and changing it into a totally different game. So, understandably, there was a lot more angst going around concerning Warhammer 40,000 8th edition than maybe there has been in the past. But it's been interesting for me. It's been a very interesting ride because I was completely absent from the fan base through almost the entirety of 7th edition, most of 6th edition, and I would say the last time that I really played with any regularity, and it wasn't a lot, was 5th edition. And 4th edition was the last time that was like my primary game for any length of time. And so this time around, I don't even know how to play the game. I literally could not have put together a game of 7th edition Warhammer 40,000. I don't know what these formations are that people talk about. I don't know what a D weapon is. I mean, I have vague understanding from some of this stuff from when I read an Apocalypse book once. But there were lots of things that apparently, I have no idea how flyers are supposed to work. So, there's a lot that had changed and happened over the course of late 6th edition into 7th edition, that I had no understanding of. So I'm always curious when a new edition comes out, and I was planning on buying it, but I didn't know. Like I got I think my 3-book starter box that I bought, really expensive hardcover books in a sleeve. I think they were 7th edition, but they might have been 6th. I don't know. I think they were 7th. But anyway, I had every intention of buying the rule book when it came out, if nothing else. And I was watching the rumors on DACA and Bell of Lost Souls and a couple other places, where I lurk on some message boards and just check things out over time. And I know how the internet works, and I know how trolls work, and I know what anonymity does to the psychology of your average human, and how the average psychology of a gamer compounds those psychological ramifications and effects. But I've been appalled by what I've seen. And the only redeeming aspect of what I've noticed is that it's always like 4 or 5 people who really go this route. And the route is this strange route of first of all, you never believe anything Games Workshop says, which has some validity to it. Games Workshop has a very shady past. Now, in the last year or so, with a lot of corporate changes and a lot of cultural changes, they've really turned that around, which I think buys them a little bit of goodwill, at least for me. But clearly there are other people who feel either they feel that they've been treated unfairly to the point where there's no reason to give them the benefit of the doubt, or for a variety of other reasons they refuse to extend that courtesy. But it's deeper than that. It's the belief that so much well thought out and choreographed lying, mendacity could be behind this corporate launch of a new product. And it always sort of takes the same pattern. Well, clearly you can tell by these 3 unrelated facts that they're totally going to screw my army, which has been totally screwed through the last 6 editions of the game. Now, the interesting thing is, from my perspective, I was in the game in 1991 and 92 when it was still Rogue Trader, and very, very invested in the game when it went from Rogue Trader to what we now call 2nd edition, and then 3rd edition. I remember all those times. So I know that these armies, half these guys are complaining about, didn't even exist back then. But the problem is, like, if you, well, this army's overpowered, and this army's overpowered, and this only my army doesn't work anymore, and hasn't worked ever. Well, then that means that you've been using a weak army for 15, 20 years, right? And to me, that seems like that. If that's true, and I don't think it is, but if it is true, shouldn't you have changed armies like 10 or 15 years ago, depending on where you sit on the learning curve? I mean, for you to just constantly complain about every rumor that comes out and just pound those monochrome, monosyllabic, monotone chords just over and over again. Oh, here they go again. And you can't go on any of these discussion pages and look. And now I'm going to these because I have no frame of reference to 7th edition, right? So I don't know what half of these rumors mean. There's no longer this, there's this instead. I don't know what that means. I don't know. So I go to the comments section to see. Usually I can glean from, amongst all of the screeds that I find on there. I can glean what impact this would have on the game I remember. But you have to wade through so much ridiculous negativity and as I said earlier, this tendency to just take these unrelated facts and I want to say it's almost like the rest of the world started to crumble and just, blatant, objective facts no longer mattering. Like everything's twisted, everything's shaded. You can't seem to trust anything out in the wider world because no matter where it's coming from someplace, and whoever's saying it is saying it to give it a spin, and you have no idea what's going on. And now it's like these people, that's how they're looking at these releases, and Games Workshop has been completely upfront for months now, talking about the new edition, talking about how it's going to change things, releasing little snippets of the rules. I mean, it's almost like they're a grown-up company now, like they've matured. It's very nice to see. Sadly, there's just some poisoned people out there that are just so far gone they can't appreciate it. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's going to be a big giant cash grab. Who knows? I mean, they're still a company. That unfortunate, uncomfortable fact still sits there somewhere, right? Their job is to make a profit. So, I mean, I would say an adult would want to sit back and go, I don't want them to fleece me, but I want them to make a profit enough so that they're still around, still making the games that I love, if I was loving playing them. But to think that this is all so anyway, so the example I wanted to say, this was going to be, of course, we just finished Memorial Day weekend. Thanks and prayers and memories to all those who have passed in service to our country and all countries, free and independent countries around the world. So I had a long weekend and I've been meaning to do this. Did you ever notice? For about 3 days now, and Russ has been waiting for it for about 4 hours. So I'm late. So I've got to wrap this up. But very quickly, so I was, right before I went in, I was like, I'm going to, I got home, I'm unpacking some stuff, I'm going to check Belglass sold. And something had come up, and the sprues. The sprues that are going to be in the starter box were just released. And someone was on there complaining about something about the sprues, and the complaint was in such direct contravention of the actual information that this person seemed to be presenting as proof that he was right. He was wrong about when the quote he was using had been issued. He was wrong about the context in which the quote was issued. He was wrong about the article in which the quote came from. And yet, here he was stating, now, if everything else he was saying about the quote was true, then it would absolutely have proven his point. But instead, it has no relevance whatsoever to his point. And that's like, this thing is like, this negativity that allows you to latch on to, or to weave, an even better word, to weave just a black narrative from these unrelated facts. and just launch into a completely unfounded screed. And I don't, go play another game. Seriously. Go, and you know what? And if you ended up doing that and you've already spent thousands of dollars on your army, you're absolutely right. That sucks. You spent thousands of dollars and it's a waste because you don't like it. You don't like the game. You don't like the company. I get it. That sucks. That's your complaint though. You know, the complaints that you're making, it's a game. And if this is what's like, I don't know. It seems the world is falling apart around our ears. And I get looking askance at Games Workshop. Hey, you don't know my history with Games Workshop. There were some unfulfilled promises there. And you know, I still worked for them when I got a chance and still did the writing when I got a chance. And maybe that's just me, but like, honestly, there's some flowers out there somewhere. There's some roses. Stop and smell them. You know, there's a sun, maybe. Not today. But, you know, eventually there will be. Look up there, look at it, let it fall on your face, and think, you know what, these are all cool things, and you've got friends that you like, theoretically, I would hope, that you like to play games with. Find a game that you're going to love. There are lots of companies out there that do not have this baggage. Okay? And maybe they don't have... Maybe there's something in Games Workshop, there's something in Warhammer 40,000 that you do like that's nowhere else in any of these other games, but I can't imagine what it might be, since you hate this game so much and this company. So I highly recommend you go out there and find Corvus Belli with Infinity. Those guys are super, super, super engaging with their fan base. Privateer Press. Spartan Games. Right? I mean, Wild West Exodus, which is now with Warforged, I think. I'm going to have to, Wayland Games, but that's like the owning company, the actual company now that I don't even know. But they're like super excited. All of these companies are on Facebook now. Games Workshop is now too. But I get it. If you're Poison, you don't want to do that anymore. That's fine. I have been talking way too long. And it just doesn't matter, because if you're that filled with anger... First of all, you're probably not listening to the D6 generation, because we just don't kind of feed that kind of anger. But if you are, I'm not going to be able to convince you otherwise. But if you do feel that deep sense of anger, that maybe just think of looking somewhere else. Because if that's not helping you, if that's your free time, that you're spending it so angry, it's not doing what it needs to do for you. I think, unless there may be people who, that they want that out of their free time. I don't know. Clearly this is not all I've got to say about this, but it's all I'm going to say for now. So thanks for listening, and good night.
Achievement unlocked! You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by either emailing us at info@the d6generation.com or by posting in our official D6G episode thread at the top of the DACA discussions forum on DACA.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. See you in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening, and happy gaming.
The theme from Total Fangirl comes from the soundtrack of The Last Night on Earth, the zombie game, courtesy of Flying Frog Productions, and is a composition of Mary Beth Magalanes.
Another Pirates of the Caribbean movie is out, and that means I got to reference my favorite Jack Sparrow song from the guys at The Lonely Island over on the Lonely Island channel on YouTube. Check it out.
Guys, Michael Bolton is here.
Oh, great. Send him in.
Hey, guys.
Hey, thanks for coming.
I'm really sorry I'm late. I just got caught up watching the Pirates of the Caribbean marathon. Have you seen those things?
Oh, yeah. Those are great.
Well, I listened to your track, and I loved it. And I wrote you this big, sexy hook I think you're going to really dig.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. Great. You want to just lay it down?
Boys, let's get to it.
Here we go. Lonely Island, Michael Bolton. Yes!
Chicken snapping at the neck when we rolling up. Blow through the doors, ain't no holding up. Black card at the bar like a
yeah. When we walk into the set, fuck the fellas looking jealous. Play the back and get wet. 3 pound in my waistline, shank in my sock. You either get cut, get stuffed, or get shot.
This is the tale of Captain Jack Sparrow, pirate so brave on the 7 seas.
What?
A mystical quest to the isle of Tortuga, raving like sway on the ocean breeze.
Yeah, that was kinda weird, but we're back in the club, buying up the bar so the groupie show us love. Motherfucking Iceman, I'm the top gunner. Heater on blast, I'm the #1 stunner.
Watch
it, girl, cause I ain't your Mr. Nice Guy. More like the meat you taste up with nowhere to run. I know I make you feel crazy.
Now back to the good part. He was born, he yearned for adventure. Oh, Captain Jack, giving them what for. He's the pauper of the surf, the jester of Tortuga, Davy Jones' locker. What lies in store?
Yeah, seen the movie. Put your hands in the air and say hell yeah. Come on.
Captain Jack,
what?
Johnny Depp.
No. From the front to the back, say we count stacks. Come on.
David Jones, Giant Squid.
Michael Bolton, we're really gonna need you to focus up.
Roger that, let me try with another film.
Wait.
Life is a box of chocolates and my name is Forrest Gump.
Not better.
Though I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, I give Jenny all my love.
Come on.
Okay, then I'm a legal aid. Aaron Brockovich is my name.
Oh, God.
And you can call me Scarface, snorting mountains of cocaine. You cockroaches wanna play rough? Okay, I'm reloaded. This is the tale of Tony Montana. Cubano flame with a Miami love. Race and white, a room is polluted.
Turns out Michael Bolton is a major cinephile.
You complete me.